Story 1. Ex-wife tried to run me over when she was caught cheating, then struggled financially while my life improved. This is a long story, but I'll try my best to make this short. We'll have to make multiple parts though to get the full picture. Through my soon-to-be ex-wife, who we will call Y, and I got married January 2020. I was 22 years at the time and Y was 21. We got married in secret. Only our close friends knew at this time. We were living on campus at our university in Miami, both coming from 2 counties away and where our families lived as well. As soon as we got married, it was a toxic nightmare. For starters, she was secretly texting her ex-boyfriend from HS, who we will call J. She stated they were just friends now, but this didn't sit right with me as this person was also her first time. I'm not the type of person to go into someone's phone as I wanted to trust her. However, she started trying her hardest to hide her phone screen from my point of view, and whenever I touched her phone she would go crazy. At some point I was able to figure out her passcode and check her messages. However, I wasn't able to find any proof to follow up on. Fast forward March 2020. The pandemic hits and everyone is forced to move back home. We were in a weird position as we still haven't told our families, so we wore our rings in secret. Everything was seemingly okay until the first week of April 2020. She just randomly stated she wanted a divorce. It shattered my heart to hear that as I cried and begged her to stay. I tried asking where did I go wrong or if I wasn't doing enough for her. She just stated she just didn't love me anymore and that she wasn't the one for me. For about a week I was trying my best to save our marriage. I was at her mercy to try to make things work out, but she's extremely stubborn. At the end of that rough week, I decided to finally accept that she doesn't want to be with me anymore. It was hard to accept, but I figured we shouldn't drag this along anymore. I only asked for her to return the wedding rings I gave her, however she refused to give them back as she stated it was a gift from her and she was entitled to keep them. Legally speaking, she may have been right, however I didn't feel like she deserved to keep them as we were no longer going to be together. The rings were real and I was only a payment plan for them for about 3 years with only 4 months and so far. We argued about this over the phone to the point I hung up and cried to myself in bed. My mother asked what was going on. I confessed everything to her and she held me in her arms and told me everything was going to be okay. The next day we both went to Y's home to where we confronted her mother and told the truth to her as well. It became an argument between our mothers with Y still upstairs refusing to see me but was texting me asking what the hell was going through my mind to get our families involved. It was then agreed by our mothers that the rings would be given back to me but on another day. About 2 days later, I get a call while at work from Y. She was crying, stating that her mother was kicking her out because she got married in secret. She stated she still loved me and was willing to give us another try, agreeing to cut off J and that we should move in together and live as a married couple. Being the idiot who was in love at the time, I rushed out of work to meet up with her and then we immediately started looking into apartments in the area. I was able to get us an apartment that was fairly cheap due to the pandemic and the move-in date was within 3 days. When I got home, I told my parents the news and my mother was not happy about this. She explained that I was making a mistake, that I need to rethink all this. My father was disappointed but stated it's my life, my choice. For the next few days, my friends helped me move things from my place and I barely talked to my parents within those days. It was heartbreaking for my mother the most and hurt me seeing my mother upset as well. First day in, I felt like our marriage was finally moving in the right direction and I was finally feeling that happiness I was feeling before she told me she wanted to divorce me. However, that happiness did not last long. A few weeks after moving in, we get invited out for some drinks and when we got back home, I went through her phone to find conversations between her and a different ex, who we will call E. The messages went as far as around the time she asked for a divorce and this made my legs crumble. She was passed out on the bed. However, I woke her up by splashing water on her and started screaming at her. She was confused as she was still tipsy, but I was very furious and yelled at her for over 2 to 3 hours. At one point, I demanded her to leave. As she was starting to come back to her senses, she began swinging at me and chasing me around the apartment, actually punching me a few times and clawing at me. I'm not a violent person at all. I took the abuse and just locked myself in the room to keep her away from me. She started crying and begging me to forgive her to the point she was on her knees and stated she would do anything to make up for it. We just began arguing and then slowly talking about the situation through the bedroom door. Eventually, we both calmed down and went to bed as it was 4 a.m. when this was happening. I didn't sleep, however, and when 7 a.m. came around, she woke up with only half the memory from what happened overnight. I yelled everything back to her again, but this time she was sober enough to know what was going and again pleaded for me to stay. She cried, stating she had nowhere else to go. In that moment, I hated her very much, as I feel she stole me from my family, my friends, and my life. About what I saw in the messages, there was nothing that stated they've done anything physical, at least from what was texted. However, there was conversations that had sealed tensions, such as her calling ES and eating they should make a video together, which I still consider cheating. After further arguing, I told her as long as she promises nothing happened between her and E, I better not see her talking to E ever again, or I will leave her this time. She pleaded that nothing ever happened, but during the same conversation, I asked if anything had happened between her and Jay. She paused and said no. It was at the moment that made me want to investigate this further. My gut told me this was only the beginning of what was to come next and turn my world upside down. I'll explain more on this another day. Update 1. Following my previous post, we are now in May 2020. When I asked if anything happened between her and Jay, where Y reluctantly responded no. A way she answered that made me suspicious. To add on a little bit more, when we first moved in April 2020, I was working at a call center about an hour away from our apartment from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. She was not working due to her job being closed, so I had to start doing Uber Eats, Postmates, and DoorDash, which would usually be 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. after work or whenever on my days off from work. Also, after the first night we moved in, I was given the cold shoulder from her. Every night while I'm at working, she would text me cute things, such as her repeatedly say she loves me and waiting for me to come home to cuddle. However, once I got home, she would barely touch me or look at me, which led to my discovery about her and E. Anyways, now we're in June 2020, weeks after the incident. At this point, I'm keeping my distance from her, keeping my same work routine while also trying to finish college classes online. She was not working yet, but whenever I came home, it was never cleaned unless I did it. Around this time, she also adopted a mini golden doodle. But when we moved and I brought my Mosi along with us, who she loved dearly, until our doodle came around, also giving him the cold shoulder. For the next few months, it's been nothing but the same routine. We tried to talk and go out on dates, but it always ended in silence. I tried to break the ice and see if we can work it out, but she never wanted to express herself. Little by little, I felt my love for her going away as I became numb to her treatment towards me. That was until October 2020 when she finally opened up to me. She apologized for her treatment towards me the past few months. We felt like we were both ready to leave the past behind and just focus on us now. It was us against the world. This felt more powerful when I caught Ko the following month, where she cared for me the way a wife should. She ended up catching it for me once I recovered, and I returned the favor. After that, we started acting more like husband and wife. She finally started getting into my hobbies, such as video games, anime, art, and photography, even coming along with me during my late-night deliveries, where we would vibe out to music and she would help as well. We discovered new things about each other, went on dates, and honestly it felt heartwarming being her presence again. That spark between us was finally coming back, but I still had a secret grudge against her actions, as it was hard to move on from it. All was going good until a few days before Valentine's Day 2021, where I made another discovery. These past months, I still secretly went through her phone every now and then, but honestly never found anything between her and E besides what I already knew. However, I decided this time to take it a step further and look at messages between her and her bestie, who I would constantly send all the gossip to with long messages and screenshots. Going through the messages made my heart sank even more when I found more details about her and Jay. Turns out that Y and Jay slept together a few days before she asked me for a divorce, and this was actually the true reason for her asking me for the divorce. As I kept reading, turns out Y and Jay had a conversation sometime in October 2020, I guess for some closure between them, which is why she finally decided to give us a shot. Oddly enough, I was not surprised this time. I woke her up from her nap and just straight up confronted about what I just read in a surprisingly calm tone. She started crying and apologizing about it, and then I just stepped out and went for a drive to clear my mind. Many dark thoughts were going through my head, feeling like I had no one to turn to. For the next few days, I avoided her actions as much as possible. We still slept in the same bed, but there was no physical touch between us. Now Valentine's Day morning, I get a couple of nudges from her in a cutesy tone asking, what did I plan for her today? Keep in mind, I'm extremely exhausted from work and my deliveries from the whole week, and obviously I'm still heartbroken. She started crying, saying that I didn't plan anything out for her. Once I heard that, I jumped out of bed and began scolding her about how crazy as hell she was to think I would do anything for her after what I just discovered. I yelled at her how she does not deserve anything from and how our marriage is a total disaster. Now you may be wondering, why am I even still here with her? Well, at this point in my life, I honestly did not have the energy for anything. I was completely blank, a complete 180 from the person I used to be. I used to be creative, make drawings and paintings, do photography and videography, and always looked forward to the next adventure, but I was hollow, feeling like, what's the point of life? I know I'm stupid for this, but I just felt like it was just easier to hide it from the world. We were already so deep into the marriage life that it felt like there was no going back, because if I did, then what would I do now? It was a dead end for me, and I blame myself for relying on her to make me happy despite also making me the saddest. Doesn't mean I forgave her or anything, I just became more numb. So after this discovery, we again entered another period of keeping our distance. Around April 2021, she took a trip to Peru with her grandmother, and honestly I was a little excited to have the place to myself for a change. I told my friends the news, and they began showing to my place frequently while she was away. Not knowing what I know, they made me feel like my old self again, doing our old late-night shenanigans and old activities like game nights, watching movies, or just hanging out. I loved the happiness I was getting back, even if it was for a moment. At the same time, the lease on our apartment was up by the end of May 2021, and I've been speaking to my father about my possibilities. That same month, my mother went up to Chicago to spend time with family members for the remainder of the year, and my dad came up with the idea of letting me and Y stay at their home while he follows her to Chicago. I agreed, but Y wasn't so enthusiastic about it. However, I didn't need her approval. It was either here or having our rent twice the price from before for another year. I moved back in with my parents in June 2021. Y is still in Peru but was returning in the next few weeks. I finally felt at home again, moving back into my old room and seeing the layout that represented my spirited youth I once had. I enjoyed my last few weeks of freedom, but I knew this happiness wasn't going to last forever as Y finally returned from her trip from Peru. The next part of the story is where crap really hits the fan, almost costing me my life. Update 2. So now it's July 2021. Y and I are living at my parents' home. I started a new job in sales and was able to advance pretty quickly to a supervisor role within 2 to 3 months, which paid well enough to afford my dream car. As for my marriage, we had a steady relationship for the remainder of the year. We had our good and bad moments, but overall it was still a blank feeling I had. I didn't know what I felt towards Y, whether it was anger, sadness, depression. I just felt like the marriage was just existing for no reason. By the start of 2022, there was a bit of reconciliation between us, enough for us to start going out on dates again. We opened up more, but we were still wondering where our marriage stood. Everything was seemingly okay until May 2022, where my life flashed before my eyes. I invited my friends over for a hangout at my parents' place to watch a boxing match. I told Y about it and stated how it will be only for a few hours and to expect some yelling as we get passionate about sports, and she was okay with it. As the fight kept going, we kept getting louder and louder to the point she was angrily texting me to keep the noise down. She would come out to grab snacks or use the bathroom only to keep slamming the door back to the room. After the fight, one of my friend's truck had a dead battery, so I used my car to jump it. While we're jumping it, the four of us kept conversating for about another half hour. While we were talking, Y demanded me through text to come inside repeatedly, to which I texted back that we're finishing up. As I'm just about to head inside, Y storms outside the house and heads to her car. I asked if everything was okay, but she had a very serious look on her face, and she angrily pushed me aside before leaving to Chicago. My dad installed outdoor solar lights in the front yard. The way Y's car was positioned, her only way out was through a grass area that had one of these lights. She revved up her car, and before she took off, I tried to stop her from running over the light and asked what was wrong. She paused for about 5 seconds, then stepped hard on the gas and almost ran me over. I jumped out the way as fast as I could, getting grazed on my knee. She drove off fast, dragging the light beneath her car, scraping the road. I sat on the ground with a surprised look on my face, thinking how she just almost ran me over. My friends helped me up and asked if I was okay. I just looked at them in shock and they offered their help. I told them just to go home while I went back inside, shaken up from the moment. I kept calling Y's phone to see why she did what she did. I go inside our room to find her phone on the ground unlocked. I go through the phone for the first time in months, and turns out there were still secrets to find out about Y. Turns out Y and J actually had a continuous affair for months ranging from March 2020 to October 2020. I finally felt something in my heart and brain to do what needed to be done a long time ago. It's about 2 a.m. I was still freaking out about this incident. I repeatedly called my sister, who lives down the road from me, about what just happened, but with no response. Y returns and tries to enter the home, but I manage to lock the door with an additional lock. I sneak out to the back and drive over to my sister's house while hyperventilating his. Y pursued me. I get to my sister's house knocking, but his Y pulled up in the driveway. I began knocking frantically as my sister and her husband finally opened the door. This caused Y to back off and drive away. I explained the situation to my sister and cried to her about what just happened, and finally opened about how she cheated on me in the past. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I was ready to finally let this marriage go. I asked her to accompany back home to make sure Y doesn't try to hurt me again. When we get there, Y was already packing up her belongings. I kept my distance for about 5 minutes, then asked her to give me back the rings and the keys. She already expected this, as she had them in her pocket, already gave them to me. She grabbed her suitcase and took our golden doodle with her. My sister and I talked a bit longer, and then she finally goes home. That night was a long one for me. I slept at about 6 a.m. only to be woken up about 7 a.m. to knocking on my window from Y. She spent the remainder of the night in her car and asked if I could at least take back the golden doodle inside. As much as I wanted to, I ignored her knocking. This went on for about 30 minutes. Later on, I reached out and met up with her to talk about the situation. I finally told her about everything I knew and decided it had better for us to separate. She cried and begged me to let us work this out, but I was tired of the emotional and physical abuse all these years, the lies, the heartbreaks, everything. As toxic as it sounds, what followed afterwards for Y was actually satisfying, as I felt like I was karma for everything she has put me through. I will sound like a crap in the next part, but I believe I deserve a genuine laughter for once. Update 3. Y moves back in with her mother, but not for long, as she does not get along with her stepfather and has too much pride to be living under her mother's roof again. She ends up finding her own place August 22nd, stating that if I ever wanted to make it work out, I was always welcome to move back in with her. My parents came back from Chicago about a week after we separated. A majority of the furniture in our bedroom was hers, as she made me throw out my items such as my bed and drawers and replace them with hers, as it looked more classy. Besides the bedroom, we had a couch, tables, kitchen appliances, etc., all boxed away in another room in the house. The day she told me she was coming to take her belongings, my father and I left everything out in the driveway, but did not bother to help them move anything into the truck. She brought along her mother, stepfather, her uncle, and her 2 aunts, who I would say are not all physically strong people. Her grandma was also there to mostly watch but help with little things. To move what took my father and I about 30 minutes to move and maneuver out the house took them 2 to 3 hours to put in a truck. We peeped through the window having a few drinks and laughed about how they were struggling while they were all talking crap about me and my family. I don't know why they included my family, but then again, there are family who talk crap about everyone and everything. When Y moved into her apartment, she was working a new job. She got through her field of study, which paid well by the hour but didn't get enough hours. She had too much pride to work a second job, as she felt like this was below her. Because of this, she struggled to keep up with her rent, electricity, water bill, car payments, insurance, etc. She reached out to me a couple times asking for money, but I refused to help her, as I felt like her financial problems had nothing to do with me. Y would try to gaslight me to give her money, saying I shouldn't let our golden doodle suffer along with her, which I replied that she should go ask her lover for money. I was surprised to learn later on that she told her mother of the truth, and her mother took my side and stated she would not be giving her money either. The rest of her family still hated me for not wanting to work it out after she cheated, but their opinions don't matter because none of them are married themselves. Months went by, we were still legally married. Y agreed to go half on the divorce fees but did not have the money. During these discussions she admitted she still had hoped for us to work it out as she still had love for me and believed I still loved her back. Call me stupid, but I did love her back, but I just knew I couldn't keep playing this game anymore. Despite everything she's done to me, it was still hard for me to hate her, as this is someone I've grew close with in high school who's helped me when I was at my lowest point in life and made me happier than anyone else ever could. Yet she still managed to break me and made me feel like I will never be good enough for anyone ever again. We still have each other on social media, and even though she claims to be struggling with money, she always seems to be out every weekend at the clubs. This usually ends up with her drunk texting or calling me stating she was wrong for how she treated me. Whenever I post on my IG or Snapchat stories about being out late at night, she's usually the first to see my posts, usually within a minute. She acknowledges that I look happier without her. As of now, I wouldn't say happy, but I do feel like this is freedom. Since moving out, she's gotten into 2 car accidents just a few months apart. We're no longer on the same insurance together, but she still called me asking if I can financially help her, which I refused and told her she was on her own now. I still had her on my phone plan a few months after, but decided to disconnect her line without letting her know. Once reconnected, she angrily texted me days later about how she lost her number and had to get a new phone because her current phone was still locked with my kid carrier, and she couldn't call to unlock it since I was the account holder. She called me a crap, and I couldn't help but laugh about it. I have this ex-girlfriend that I ended off on good terms with. We were friends until Y and I got married, where she forced me to cut off my friendship with her out of fear that my ex would try to get with me again. We started hanging out again, and when Y found out, she swears that I only divorced her to get back with my ex. I had no interest in her after the breakup, only seeing her as a friend at this point. Even after Y and I separated, from what I heard from a mutual friend, she tried to get back E, who now has a girlfriend and a child. She also tried again with J, who now has a girlfriend. Y would sometimes reach out to me about how she's still behind on certain bills, would barely eat, almost got evicted twice, and can't afford to care for the golden doodle. If I had to guess, she's most likely getting money from her grandmother. We would still text time to time to figure out a court date or days where I still had to give some leftover stuff from home. She would always say she would never find a guy like me and how much she wishes we could try again and regrets her actions. Part of this made me feel happy for karma, the other part would be feeling sad about how everything led up to this moment. Around March 2023, we went to court to finally file our divorce. While waiting for our turn, she stepped out and hulled to cry her eyes out while I just sat there not knowing what to think. After about 10 minutes, it's finally our turn, and we began signing away. Ever since then, we just now talk with a few texts once everywhere 1 to 2 weeks, saying what we have left to say. As for myself, I was promoted to manager a month after we separated. I stayed in this position until November 2022 as I was overworked to the point of getting no sleep. I was able to find a better paying job, one that I continue to work for to this day. During the marriage, I've gained weight from overeating to help cope with my depression. I've been going back to the gym but need to work on getting a routine. I have big plans with my friends for the summer and myself for later this year. It's now June 2023. I wouldn't say life is perfect, but whenever I'm having a bad day, I think about how Y's life is basically falling apart now. Ever since we parted ways, makes me feel like she deserves to feel what I felt for 6+ years. I'm an idiot for thinking this way about her, but at least my life is finally going in the right direction and hopefully continues that way, and she could see how happy I could be without her. Update 4. This is my last post about this, just for a few clarifications. I had to cut this section out of part 4 to be able to post it. If there's any other questions, I can try answer them as well. The history of Y and I dates back to our high school days. There's more details about how Y and I first met up to the point where we got married. Looking back on it, we always had a toxic relationship, but that's to say it was all bad, as we had our great moments as well as for how our boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. When and why I married her, I'll explain that another time if necessary. I appreciate the feedback, both good and bad. Like I said before, I was a dumb crap who thought everything would magically work out. I don't know if I would call this outcome a win for me, but at least I can finally start over now. To the readers that think this is made up, I don't have the time to come up with a story like this. I'm posting my experience as a way for me to get this off my chest. I'm not the best when it comes to expressing myself in person, and Reddit probably isn't the best place to do it, but posting here with other people who had similar experiences has made it easier for me. But thanks for still actually reading all these long posts. Sadly, this isn't my first rodeo. There's a relationship I had before this that broke me and made me who I am today. Sounds dramatic, but that's the best way to put it. I'm open to talking about it one day. Update 5. Today I'm going to court to meet up with my wife who we're calling Y. She texted me Monday, June 26th to remind me we have court today, June 30th. Yesterday she gave me one more reminder and also asked for a few things I still had left from her. I asked for some things as well. We still have each other on social media where we still see each other's stories. I don't snoop or anything, I just happen to see it when I'm seeing other stories. I suppose she has a sort of new boyfriend now, or at least is working up to it, as she's been posting text messages between her and the same guy. I don't think it's to get me jealous or anything, but knowing her, she likes the attention from other people, as she did the same thing when her and I were becoming a thing, but I don't feel any jealousy or hate towards her. I'm actually relieved she's moving on. The way I see it, someone else is taking over my old problems. They have no idea what type of hell they're getting into. All I can say is good luck, they're going to need it. As for court, I actually feel excited about it. I can continue to move on with my life and she can finally be out of the picture. She stated that even after the divorce we can still be friends, mostly because of the golden doodle we have together. Despite me loving that dog, I have to let this all go after we finalize everything. I will block her on everything so I don't have to see or hear about her again. As for myself, I haven't tried to meet anyone new. I don't really have it in me to try again. Main thing holding me back is the trust issues and my own insecurities. Usually when I've been in a relationship, it's always been the female that made the first move on me, including why I should really change that though, but for right now my main focus is work and bills that I'm close to paying off. One of my friends is now training me at the gym. So far I've lost 10 PBS. My friend group and I are going on our summer trip next week. We have multiple locations to drop by within our state, so yeah, life is good so far, and I'll try to update how the court went afterwards. Update 6. Sorry for the late update. I've been working overtime like crazy, but today I have time. On Friday, June 30th, we get to the courthouse and wait for our turn with a clerk. After like 3 minutes we get called, and there's only one chair for us to sit down. I take the chair for myself, and even though I'm not looking at her, I can feel why staring at me hard. She says, "Can I at least sit down?" To which I respond, "Then grab a chair," and she just says whatever and stands up. We explain the reason for divorce. We're not fighting for anything, just simply separating. A couple times the lady had to walk back and forth or type something in the computer during those moments. She would say little remarks like she can't wait to get rid of me, that it was me who trapped her into a marriage, and that I never satisfied her, etc. Not to sound crappy, but I know she was saying most of that stuff to mask what she really felt. I know this because she followed up that she hopes I have fun with my ex who were still friends, but like I said before, I have no interest in, but she swears I'm in love with. While we kept going back and forth, the clerk was trying so hard not to laugh. We pay the fee, and now we just have one more court date in 1 to 2 months. It was raining when we walked out, so we still discussed a few things. Main thing, she asked if I could watch our golden doodle in August while she goes to her trip out the country. I said not possible for me, and she followed that I'm a deadbeat dog dad and that I will never see him again, and left. Here's the kicker. Yesterday Y asked if I can watch the golden doodle for today, to which I can't because I work today, even though it's 4th of July, and also today is her birthday. She won't be getting a happy birthday from me though. Also, her family does not celebrate birthdays, especially her mother and stepfather, because they're both JWS. Her only real option is her best friend, who's most likely going to do something with her boyfriend rather than Y. So yeah, now I'm at work waiting 2 more days before vacation. Nothing really different going on from the last update. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Stepmom tried to steal my college fund that my dad offered and then got me kicked out after accusing me of I, 18M, am in a difficult situation with my stepmom, Megan, 40F, regarding my college fund, and I'm starting to question everything. This is a long and complicated situation, so bear with me. Some background. My parents divorced when I was 10. It was a messy split that left me feeling lost and alone for a long time. My dad, 45M, remarried Megan when I was 14, and she brought 2 kids from her previous marriage into our family. Jack, 16M, and Emma, 13F. The transition wasn't easy, and we've never really felt like a cohesive family unit despite Megan's constant efforts to push the one big happy family narrative. I've always been a good student, maintaining a 3.8 GPA throughout high school. My dream is to attend a prestigious university and study engineering. I've participated in the robotics club where I've won several competitions, and I've volunteered at the local animal shelter for the past 3 years. Dad's always been supportive of my academic goals, at least until recently. A few months ago, as I was starting to apply to colleges, Dad sat me down for a talk. He told me about a substantial college fund he'd been saving for me since I was born. It's enough to cover tuition and living expenses at most top universities. I was thrilled, feeling like my hard work was paying off and my dreams were within reach. We spent hours that night talking about different universities, discussing programs, and planning campus visits. It was one of the best conversations I'd had with Dad in years. The problem started when Megan found out about the college fund. At first, it was subtle. She cornered me in the kitchen one morning when Dad had already left for work. Her tone seemed casual, but there was an edge to her words. She said things like, when I was your age, I worked my way through college, took out loans, worked part-time jobs. It really taught me the value of money. I tried to brush it off, telling her that I was planning to get a part-time job too to cover extra expenses. But Megan said, "But you don't really need to, do you? Not with all that money just being handed to you." From that point on, Megan's comments became more frequent and pointed. She started bringing up stories of self-made individuals at dinner, always with a pointed look in my direction. She'd talk about her friend's son who's working 3 jobs to pay for his engineering degree, or her cousin who paid off her student loans in record time and is now a successful entrepreneur. These stories became a regular feature at our dinner table, always accompanied by comments about responsibility and the value of hard work. Dad would nod along, seemingly oblivious to the implication that I was somehow less responsible or hardworking for accepting his help. The worst part is Megan started to manipulate Dad. I've overheard her talking to him about how giving me the money might stop my growth or make me dependent. She keeps pushing the idea that I should work my way through college or take out loans like everyone else. One evening, I overheard them talking in their bedroom. Megan was saying, "I'm just worried about him, honey. Giving him all that money, don't you think it might make him lazy? Maybe we should consider reducing the fund or only paying for tuition but not living expenses." To my horror, Dad said something about how he'd always planned to help me with college, but he also acknowledged that Megan might have a point about the value of working for things. Since then, Dad started to waver. He's making comments about maybe reducing the fund or only paying for tuition but not living expenses. It's like he's forgotten all our previous conversations about my future, all his promises of support. I tried talking to Mom about this, but she and Dad barely communicate. When I explained the situation to her over the phone, she got angry and told me to stand up for myself and not let that woman push me around. Easy for her to say. She doesn't have to live with Megan. Mom's advice, while well-intentioned, doesn't really help me navigate the day-to-day tension at home. Last week, things came to a head when I overheard Megan talking to Jack in the kitchen. I was heading to my room when I heard Megan say, "Don't worry about college, honey. I'm working on getting some of your stepbrother's college fund redirected to your future. It's not fair that he gets such a large sum when you and Emma won't." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only was Megan trying to take away my college fund, but she was actively working to give it to her own kids. The injustice of it made me see red. Without thinking, I stormed into the kitchen and confronted her. Megan's eyes widened in surprise. "Were you eavesdropping?" she asked. I was too angry to care about her accusation. "What do you mean you're working on my college fund? That's money Dad's been saving for me since I was born." Megan's expression hardened. "I'm simply trying to ensure that all the children in this family are treated fairly," she said. "It's not right for you to get such a large sum when Jack and Emma won't have the same opportunity." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But it's not your money to redistribute," I argued. "Dad saved that for me long before you were even in the picture." Megan got angry and said, "Watch your tone, young man. You're being incredibly selfish right now. Have you even considered your step-siblings' futures?" I felt like I was going crazy. Selfish for wanting to use the money my dad saved for my education? How does that make me selfish? Megan crossed her arms. A truly responsible adult would understand the importance of fairness in a family. Maybe you should consider community college if you're so worried about money. It would certainly be a more modest, appropriate choice. I was speechless. The audacity of her suggestion left me angry. I looked at Jack, hoping for some support, but he just stared at the floor, clearly uncomfortable. "This is insane," I finally managed to say. "I'm going to talk to Dad about this." Megan smiled and said, "Go ahead. But remember, your father and I are partners. We make decisions together about what's best for this family." I stormed out of the kitchen. I needed to talk to Dad, to make him understand what was happening. But every time I've tried to get him alone since then, Megan's been there, hovering, steering the conversation. The next few days were tense. Megan acted as if nothing had happened, but there was a smugness in her demeanor that made my blood boil. She'd make comments at dinner about the importance of money, responsibility, and not taking handouts, always with a pointed look in my direction. Dad seemed oblivious to the undercurrents of tension. He'd nod along to Megan's comments, occasionally adding his own anecdote about the value of hard work. It was like he'd forgotten all our previous conversations about my future, all his promises of support. I felt increasingly isolated. Jack and Emma avoided me, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but unwilling to go against their mother. I threw myself into my college applications, determined to secure as many scholarship opportunities as possible, just in case. One evening, I finally managed to corner Dad alone in his study and said that I wanted to talk to him about something. Dad looked up from his computer, his brow furrowed. "What about it, son?" I took a deep breath. "Megan's been saying some things about redistributing the money, about me maybe not using it at all. I thought we had a plan." Dad's expression was hard to read. He sighed. "Your stepmom's raised some valid points about responsibility and the value of working for things," he said slowly. "Maybe we were too hasty in offering you the full amount." I felt like the floor was dropping out from under me. "But Dad, you promised," I said. "I've worked so hard, maintained my grades, done everything you asked of me." Dad looked uncomfortable. "I know, son, and we're proud of you, but Megan thinks." "Since when does Megan get to decide my future?" I interrupted, anger finally breaking through. "She's not my mom. She wasn't there all those years you were saving for my education." Dad's expression hardened. "Megan is my wife and a part of this family. Her opinion matters. More than your promise to me?" I asked before Dad could answer. The study door opened and Megan walked in and asked, "Is everything okay?" Dad said, "Everything's fine. We were just discussing college options." Megan smiled. "Wonderful. I was thinking we could all sit down this weekend and look at some more affordable schools, maybe some with good work-study programs." I looked at Dad, silently pleading with him to say something, to stand up for me, but he just nodded. I left the study feeling defeated and betrayed. It was clear that Megan had won. My dreams of attending a top university were slipping away. Some additional points that I think are relevant. 1. Megan has never worked outside the home since marrying my dad. She's always talking about the importance of financial independence, but she relies entirely on my dad's income. When I pointed this out once, she got really defensive and said that being a stay-at-home mom was the most important job in the world. 2. When I brought up the unfairness of potentially redirecting my college fund to Jack and Emma, Megan says it's about equality in the family, but she conveniently ignores that my dad started this fund long before she was in the picture. She also ignores the fact that Jack and Emma's bio dad is still in the picture and could potentially contribute to their college funds. 3. I've tried to compromise, suggesting that I could work part-time during college to cover some expenses, but Megan dismisses this as not being responsible enough. She seems to think that unless I'm struggling and stressed about money, I'm not learning the right lessons. 4. Dad seems conflict-averse and often goes along with what Megan says to keep the peace. I'm worried he'll cave to her pressure about the college fund. He's always been this way, even when he was married to my mom. I think it's part of why their marriage fell apart. 5. I've considered reaching out to my grandparents, Dad's parents, about this, but I'm worried it will cause more family drama. They've never been big fans of Megan, and I'm afraid that if they get involved, it will just make the situation at home even more tense. 6. Megan is constantly pushing this one big happy family narrative, but her actions don't match her words. She treats Jack and Emma differently than she treats me, and it's becoming more and more obvious. For example, she never questions their spending habits or lectures them about financial responsibility. 7. I've started to wonder if Megan's pushing so hard against me using the college fund because she wants to use the money for something else. Maybe for a big family vacation or to renovate the house or to pay for Jack and Emma's college. But I have no proof of this, just a suspicion. 8. Megan has started making comments about how I should be more grateful for everything she and my dad have done for me. She talks about how they've sacrificed so much to give me a good life, but from my perspective, it's my dad who's made the sacrifices, not her. 9. I'm starting to feel like I'm being gaslit. Megan will say one thing to me when we're alone, then completely deny it or twist her words when Dad's around. It's making me question my own memories. 10. I'm worried that if I push too hard against Megan, she'll convince my dad to kick me out. I'll be 18 soon, and I know they technically won't have any legal obligation to support me anymore. I feel like I'm at a crossroads. If I stand up for myself and insist on using the college fund, I risk damaging my relationship with my dad and making my home life unbearable. If I give in to Megan's demands, I might be giving up on my dreams and setting myself up for a future of financial struggle. Am I the asshole for wanting to accept my dad's college fund? Should I just suck it up and find a way to pay for college myself? I feel like I'm losing my mind here, and I could really use some outside perspective. ETA, edit to add, I realized I should clarify something about the college fund situation. When I mentioned the college fund my dad told me about a few months ago, it wasn't because I felt entitled to it. This fund came as a surprise to me, but it aligned with my dad's consistent encouragement of my academic efforts throughout high school. Although I didn't know about the specific fund until recently, my dad had always assured me that he would support my college education if I maintained good grades. This promise is why I focus so intensely on my studies, maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I understand that I'm not automatically entitled to this money, and I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity it represents. If my dad had told me he couldn't afford to help with college, I would have understood and found other ways to pay for it. My frustration isn't about feeling entitled but about the sudden shift in plans after the fund was revealed. Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and I wish I had better news to share. Things have gone from bad to worse, and I'm now writing this from my friend Mike's guest room. I've been kicked out of my home, and my relationship with my dad is in ruin. Here's what happened. After my last post, the problems in our house continued to escalate. Megan's comments about my college fund became more frequent and more pointed. She'd bring it up at every opportunity, always with a snide remark about how I needed to learn the value of hard work and independence. Dad remained frustratingly passive, rarely intervening and often nodding along with Megan's words. I tried to keep my head down and focus on my college applications. I spent most of my time in my room, avoiding family dinners and common areas as much as possible. But Megan seemed to take this as a personal problem. She started accusing me of being antisocial and ungrateful, claiming that I was deliberately excluding myself from family time. The breaking point came last weekend. I had finally received an acceptance letter from my dream school, a top-tier engineering program that I've been working towards for years. In my excitement, I forgot about the ongoing problems and rushed downstairs to share the news with Dad. Megan was in the kitchen when I found him, but I was too happy to care. Dad's initial reaction was one of happiness. For a moment, it felt like old times, as he hugged me and started asking questions about the program. But then Megan cleared her throat, and the mood in the room instantly changed. She started in on her complaints about financial responsibility. I couldn't take it anymore. All the frustration and anger that had been building up over the past months came pouring out. I confronted Megan about her constant interference, her attempts to redirect my college fund, and her manipulation of my dad. I told her that she had no right to try and take away something that my dad had been saving for me since before she was even in the picture. The argument quickly escalated. Megan's face turned red with anger as she started shouting about how ungrateful and selfish I was. She accused me of never accepting her as part of the family, of always treating her and her children as outsiders. Dad tried to intervene, but neither of us was listening at that point. In the heat of the moment, I said some things I'm not proud of. I called Megan a gold digger who was only interested in my dad's money. I accused her of trying to steal my college fund for her own kids. I even brought up the fact that she had never worked a day since marrying my dad despite her constant preaching about financial independence. Megan's reaction was explosive. She turned to my dad and, through tears, told him that she couldn't live like this anymore. She said she felt unsafe in her own home, that I had been hostile and aggressive towards her for years. And then she dropped the bombshell that would change everything. Megan claimed that I had been making inappropriate advances towards her for months. She said that I had been cornering her when we were alone, making suggestive comments, and even trying to touch her inappropriately. She painted a picture of herself as a terrified victim who had been too scared to speak up until now. I was stunned into silence. The accusation was so outrageous, so completely fabricated, that I couldn't even form words to defend myself. I looked to my dad, expecting him to see through this obvious lie, but the moment I saw his face, I just knew. He was staring at me with a mixture of disgust and disappointment that I had never seen before. I tried to defend myself, to explain that Megan was lying, but Dad wouldn't listen. He seemed to have already made up his mind. In a voice shaking with anger, he told me to go to my room while he and Megan discussed what to do. I spent the next few hours pacing in my room, alternating between anger and disbelief. I couldn't understand how my dad could believe such an outrageous lie. I tried to think of ways to prove my innocence, but it was my word against Megan's, and it was clear whose side my dad had chosen. Later that evening, Dad came to my room. His face was grim, and he couldn't even look me in the eye as he spoke. He said that he couldn't have someone who would act so inappropriately living under his roof. He told me I had until the end of the week to find somewhere else to live. I tried once again to plead my case, to make him see reason, but he wouldn't hear it. He just kept repeating that he was disappointed in me and that he never thought I could do something like this. Before he left, he handed me an envelope containing some cash to help me get started. I packed up my belongings in a daze, still unable to believe what was happening. Jack and Emma avoided me completely, no doubt having been told some version of Megan's lies. I tried one last time to talk to Dad, to make him see the truth, but Megan was always there, playing the part of the traumatized victim. I reached out to my mom, explaining the situation through tears. She was furious and wanted to confront Dad and Megan immediately, but I begged her not to. I was afraid it would only make things worse, and a small part of me still hoped that Dad would come to his senses on his own. Fortunately, my friend Mike came through for me in a big way. When I told him what had happened, he immediately offered his guest room. His parents are out of town for a few months on a work assignment, so I can stay here without causing any trouble for his family. Now I'm trying to adjust to life in Mike's house. He's been incredibly supportive, but I can't help feeling like a burden. I'm trying to contribute where I can, cooking meals, doing chores, but it's not the same as having my own place. I've been alternating between anger and despair. How could my dad believe such a horrible lie? How could he throw away our relationship, all the years of memories and trust, based on Megan's word alone? And how could Megan do this? I knew she didn't like me, but to accuse me of something so horrible, to deliberately destroy my relationship with my dad, it's a level of cruelty I can't even comprehend. I've thought about going to my grandparents, but I'm afraid of how they'll react to Megan's accusations. What if they believe her too? I couldn't bear to see that same look of disgust and disappointment on their faces. I've also considered going to the police to file a report about Megan's false accusations, but I'm not sure what good it would do. It's not like she's made these claims publicly or tried to press charges, and I'm afraid that involving the authorities might just make my dad double down on his belief in Megan's lies. My mom has offered to let me stay with her, but she lives in another state. Moving there would mean giving up on my dream school, on the future I've been working towards for years. But I'm starting to wonder if I have any other choice. Megan's lie has destroyed everything, and there seems to be nothing I can do about it. My dad, the person who was supposed to know me better than anyone, who was supposed to have my back no matter what, has chosen to believe the worst about me without even giving me a chance to defend myself. I've been going over every interaction I've had with Megan, trying to understand where this lie came from. Was it just an opportunistic move when she saw how angry I was during our argument? Or had she been planning this for a while, waiting for the right moment to get rid of me for good? Either way, the level of calculation and cruelty involved makes me feel sick. As for my college fund, I have no idea what's going to happen to it now. Will Megan give it all to Jack and Emma? Will my dad use it to pay for my dream school even though he thinks I'm some kind of predator? I've been trying to figure out my next steps. Mike has helped me find a part-time job at a local grocery store. It's not much, but it's something to help me contribute to household expenses and save a little for the future. Every time I try to think practically about my situation, I'm overwhelmed by a wave of anger and hurt. I've considered reaching out to Megan's ex-husband, Jack and Emma's dad. Maybe he has some insight into her behavior, some experience with her lies, but I'm afraid of opening up that kind of can of worms. The reality of my situation is starting to sink in. I'm relying on the kindness of a friend, with limited funds, no permanent place to live. The unfairness of it all is almost too much to bear. I did everything right. I studied hard, I stayed out of trouble, I worked towards my goals, and in the span of a single weekend, it's all been taken away from me because of one person's lies. I'm trying to stay strong, to not let this break me. I keep telling myself that the truth will come out eventually, that my dad will realize what Megan has done and come looking for me to apologize. But with each passing day, that hope feels more and more like a childish fantasy. I'm not sure what my next update will bring. For now, I want to thank everyone who read my original post and offered advice. I'm sorry I couldn't take action on most of it before everything fell apart. If anyone has been through a similar situation or has any advice on how to move forward from here, I would be incredibly grateful. I feel lost and alone, and any guidance would be welcome. I'll try to post another update when I have more news. Until then, wish me luck. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. Update 2. It's been about 2 weeks since my last update, and a lot has happened. I'm still living at Mike's place, but there's been an unexpected development that I needed to update you on. I was at work, restocking shelves at the grocery store, when I got a call from my grandparents. I almost didn't answer. I've been avoiding calls from unknown numbers, afraid it might be Dad or Megan trying to contact me, but something told me to pick up, and I'm glad I did. As soon as I heard my grandmother's voice, I knew something was wrong. She sounded worried and confused, asking if I was okay and if I was safe. At first, I didn't understand what was going on. Then she mentioned that Dad had called them, telling them some disturbing news about why I'd left home. I got extremely scared that Megan's lies had spread beyond just Dad. I asked my grandmother what exactly Dad had told them, and her response confirmed my worst fears. Dad had told them about Megan's false accusations, painting me as some kind of predator who had been making inappropriate advances towards my stepmother. I felt sick to my stomach. It was bad enough that Dad believed these lies, but now my grandparents, too. I couldn't bear the thought of them looking at me the way Dad had that last night at home, with disgust and disappointment. But as my grandmother kept talking, I realized something. Unlike Dad, who had immediately believed Megan's accusations, my grandparents were skeptical. They knew me, had watched me grow up, and something about this story didn't sit right with them. That's why they were calling, not to condemn me, but to hear my side of the story. For a moment, I was tempted to brush it off, to tell them it was all a misunderstanding and change the subject. I was so tired of trying to defend myself against these horrible lies. But then I realized this might be my only chance to get the truth out there, to have someone in my family believe me. So I took a deep breath and told them everything. I started from the beginning, explaining about the college fund and Megan's increasing attempts to interfere. I told them about the arguments, about overhearing Megan's plans to redirect the money to Jack and Emma. I described the final confrontation and how Megan had made up these terrible accusations when she realized she was losing control of the situation. As I spoke, I could hear my grandparents' reactions changing, from confusion to shock to anger. They asked questions, wanting to clarify certain points, but mostly they just listened. When I finally finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my grandfather spoke, his voice hard with suppressed anger. He said they believed me, that they knew I would never do the things Megan had accused me of. He asked why I hadn't come to them sooner, and I admitted that I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, that they'd side with Dad like he had sided with Megan. My grandmother assured me that they would always be on my side, that they were sorry I'd been going through this alone. Then she said something that made me freeze. They were going to talk to Dad. I panicked a bit, worried that confronting Dad would only make things worse, but my grandparents were adamant. They said that they couldn't stand by and watch their son throw away his relationship with his child over a lie. They promised to call me back after they'd spoken to him. The next few hours were agonizing. I couldn't focus on work. What if Dad didn't listen to them? What if this just made him angry, made him double down on his belief in Megan's lies? Or worse, what if my grandparents changed their minds after talking to him, decided that maybe Megan was telling the truth after all? When my phone finally rang again, I answered it. My grandfather's voice was grave as he explained what had happened. They'd called Dad, confronted him with what I'd told them. Dad had tried to defend Megan at first, but they wouldn't let him brush it off. They demanded to know how he could believe such terrible things about his own son, how he could throw me out without even trying to get to the bottom of things. Apparently, the conversation got heated. My grandfather said that for the first time in years, he'd raised his voice at his son. He'd told Dad that he was making a terrible mistake, that he was being manipulated by Megan and risking losing his relationship with me forever. Then my grandfather dropped a bombshell. He told Dad that if he didn't fix the situation, if he didn't at least try to hear me out and get to the truth, they would change their will. All of their assets, the inheritance that Dad had always assumed would be his one day, would go to me instead. I was stunned. I'd never even thought about my grandparents' inheritance, had never considered it as part of my future. To hear they were willing to use it as leverage to force Dad to see reason was overwhelming. My grandmother got on the phone then. She told me that they were behind me 100%, that they would do whatever it took to help me through this. They offered to let me come stay with them, to help me figure out my college situation. They even said they'd hire a lawyer if necessary to protect me from any further false accusations from Megan. I was grateful beyond words, but also terrified. This felt like it was spiraling out of control, becoming bigger than just a family dispute. I asked them what Dad's reaction had been to their ultimatum. My grandfather explained that Dad had been shocked into silence at first, then angry. He'd accused them of taking sides without knowing the full story, of trying to blackmail him. The call had ended with Dad hanging up on them. Now we're in a waiting game. My grandparents have given Dad a week to reach out to me, to at least attempt to hear my side of the story. If he doesn't, they say they'll follow through on their threat about the inheritance. Part of me hopes this will be the wake-up call Dad needs, that it will make him question Megan's story and remember who I really am. But another part of me is terrified that this will just drive a deeper wedge between us, that Dad will see this as me turning his parents against him. As for my living situation, things with Mike are still okay, but I know I can't stay here forever. His parents will be back in a few weeks, and while they might be understanding of the situation, I can't impose on them like that. My grandparents' offer to let me stay with them is tempting, but they live in another state. I'm still working at the grocery store trying to save up money, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what I'll need for college. I've been researching scholarships and loans, but without access to my college fund, the numbers just don't add up. The thought of giving up on my dream school, of settling for a cheaper option, or delaying college altogether is heartbreaking. I've also been dealing with the emotional fallout of all this. Some days I can barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by the unfairness of it all. Other days I'm angry, wanting to confront Dad and Megan and force them to admit the truth. Mike's been great, listening when I need to vent and giving me space when I need to be alone, but I know this situation is stressing him out too. My mom's been calling regularly, still offering to let me come stay with her. I appreciate her support, I just can't just leave. Plus, a small, petty part of me doesn't want to give Dad and Megan the satisfaction of driving me away completely. So now I wait. I wait to see if Dad will reach out, if he'll be willing to listen to the truth. I'll try to post another update when I have more news. Until then, wish me luck. I have a feeling I'm going to need it. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and the situation has completely exploded. I'm still processing everything that's happened, but I'll try to lay it out as clearly as I can. Brace yourselves because this is going to be a long one. About a month after my grandparents gave my dad their ultimatum, I got a call from him. His voice was shaking, and he sounded like he'd been crying. He asked if we could meet in person, saying he had something important to tell me. I was wary but agreed to meet him at a local coffee shop. When I saw him, I barely recognized him. He looked like he'd aged years in just a few months, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. As soon as we sat down, he broke down completely, sobbing and begging for my forgiveness. He explained that he discovered the truth about Megan's lies. Apparently, she'd been cheating on him with her ex-husband, Jack, and Emma's father, for the past few months. Not only that, but she was pregnant, and the timing made it clear that the baby couldn't be my dad's. Dad had overheard Megan on the phone with her ex, discussing their plans for the future. He didn't get the full picture from that one conversation, but it was enough to make him suspicious. He started paying more attention, noticing inconsistencies in Megan's stories and behavior. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Dad came home early one day and found Megan and her ex in a compromising position. When confronted, Megan didn't immediately admit to everything. Instead, she tried to gaslight Dad, insisting that he was imagining things and that her ex was just there to discuss something about the kids. But Dad wasn't buying it anymore. He demanded the truth, and what came out was even worse than he'd imagined. Megan and her ex had reconnected a few months ago, supposedly while discussing issues related to Jack and Emma. One thing led to another and they started an affair. However, as the truth unfolded, it became clear that Megan's deception went beyond just the affair. She admitted that she had been unhappy in the marriage for a while, feeling like she had rushed into it without fully moving on from her ex. Instead of addressing these issues honestly, she had chosen to manipulate the situation to her advantage. Megan confessed that she had seen Dad's college fund for me as a threat to her financial security. She didn't have direct access to it, but she had been subtly pushing Dad to consider using that money for other purposes, like home renovations or family vacations. Her plan was to gradually erode the fund while securing her own financial position. The false accusations against me were part of this plan, though Megan tried to downplay her role in it. She claimed that she had genuinely felt uncomfortable around me at times but admitted to exaggerating and twisting events to paint me in a bad light. Her goal was to create distance between Dad and me, ensuring that I wouldn't interfere with her plans. When Dad confronted Megan with all of this, she didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, she tried to spin a new lie, claiming that her ex had manipulated her, that she was a victim too. She cried and pleaded, saying she'd made a mistake but that she truly loved Dad. But the act fell apart when her ex, angry at being thrown under the bus, showed Dad text messages and emails proving that Megan had been an eager participant in the affair and the manipulation. Some of the messages detailed their plans for the future, including how they would handle the divorce and divide assets. The cruelty of it all was staggering. Megan had not only betrayed Dad's trust with the affair, but she'd been actively working to undermine his relationship with me and secure her own financial future at our expense. She'd played on Dad's insecurities and his desire to make his new marriage work, all while plotting her exit strategy. Dad was a mess as he told me all this. He kept apologizing, saying he knew he didn't deserve my forgiveness, but that he hoped someday I might be able to trust him again. He told me he was filing for divorce immediately and would do everything in his power to make things right. The divorce proceedings have been a nightmare. Megan, realizing that her plan had fallen apart, is now trying to get as much as she can before the divorce is finalized. She's claiming that she's entitled to half of everything, including the house and Dad's retirement savings. Dad had filed for divorce immediately after discovering Megan's affair, but the legal wheels turned slowly. We've been through countless preliminary hearings and failed mediation attempts. Our lawyer says it could be another 6 months to a year before everything is finalized. Fortunately, the evidence of her infidelity and the manipulative nature of her actions is working in Dad's favor. In our state, while adultery doesn't automatically disqualify a spouse from receiving alimony, it is taken into consideration when determining spousal support. The judge has been unsympathetic to Megan's claims, especially given the existence of those damning text messages and emails. Megan's pregnancy has complicated matters. She's trying to use it as leverage, hinting that the baby might be Dad's after all and that he shouldn't abandon his child. However, given the timeline of her affair and Dad's evidence, it's highly unlikely that the baby is his. Dad's lawyer has advised him to request a paternity test once the baby is born, but for now, Megan can't use the pregnancy as effectively to manipulate the situation. As for my college fund, it turns out Megan couldn't directly access it, but she had been pressuring Dad to withdraw money from it for various family expenses. Dad, wanting to keep the peace and believing Megan's lies about me not deserving the money, had agreed a few times. He's promised to replace every penny, even if he has to work 2 jobs to do it. The most infuriating part is how Megan continues to try to manipulate everyone around her. She's told Jack and Emma that Dad is trying to steal her baby, that he's abusive, and they need to testify against him in the divorce proceedings. She's reached out to family friends, spinning a story of being a misunderstood wife who made a one-time mistake but deserves a second chance. She even had the audacity to call me, crying and saying that she never meant for things to go this far, that she was just scared and confused. She tried to convince me that if I told Dad I forgave her, maybe we could all be a family again. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost laughable, but it still made me feel sick to my stomach. Jack and Emma are caught in the middle of this nightmare. They'd been spending more time with their dad recently, not knowing that their parents were rekindling their relationship behind my dad's back. When everything came out, they were devastated. They've reached out to me and Dad, apologizing for not standing up for me and explaining that Megan had fed them lies about me too. Megan had told them that I was jealous of them and trying to sabotage their relationship with Dad. She'd convinced them that I was unstable and potentially violent, which is why they had avoided me in those last few weeks before I left. Learning the truth has been a huge blow to them, and they're struggling to come to terms with who their mother really is. Dad has been trying to make amends in every way he can think of. He's reached out to my grandparents, thanking them for standing by me and apologizing for not listening to them sooner. He's offered to pay for therapy for me, recognizing the emotional trauma this whole ordeal has caused. He's even trying to make things right with my mom, acknowledging that his poor choices have put an unfair burden on her. As for me, I'm still trying to process everything. Part of me is relieved that the truth is finally out, that I've been vindicated and my dad finally believes me. But another part of me is angry. Angry that it took this level of betrayal for him to see the truth. Angry that I had to go through months of pain and uncertainty because he couldn't trust his own son over a woman he'd only known for a few years. I've moved back home for now into my old room. It's strange being back here, knowing everything that's happened. Dad and I are walking on eggshells around each other, both of us unsure how to rebuild our relationship. We're going to start family therapy soon, hoping to work through some of the hurt and mistrust that's built up. My college plans are back on track. Dad has promised to do whatever it takes to make sure I can attend my dream school, and I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. My grandparents have been incredibly supportive, offering both emotional and financial help if I need it. The legal battles are far from over. Megan is fighting tooth and nail for every penny she can get, dragging out the divorce proceedings with constant demands and accusations. Her lawyer has tried to paint her as a devoted wife and stepmother who made a one-time mistake, but the evidence of her manipulative behavior is damaging her case. Dad's lawyer has been pushing for a fair but firm settlement. Given Megan's infidelity and the premeditated nature of her deception, she's unlikely to get the windfall she was hoping for. The judge seems inclined to award her only the bare minimum required by law, which is a small victory in this mess. There's also the question of potential criminal charges. The lawyer has suggested that Megan's actions might constitute fraud, given the level of financial manipulation involved. It's a complex legal area, and Dad is still deciding whether he wants to pursue that avenue or just focus on finalizing the divorce and moving on with our lives. Megan's ex isn't getting off scot-free either. His involvement in the affair and subsequent manipulation has come to light, and he's facing his own legal troubles. His current wife, yes, he was married this whole time, has filed for divorce, and there's talk of his company firing him due to the scandal. It's a small consolation, but it does feel like some form of justice. As I sit here writing this update, I'm struck by how quickly and thoroughly one person's lies can destroy multiple lives. Megan walked away from the wreckage she created without a backward glance, leaving the rest of us to pick up the pieces. It's going to be a long road to recovery for all of us. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe again. The truth is out, my name is cleared, and I have my dad back. Even if our relationship is fragile right now, it's more than I dared to hope for during those dark days when I thought I'd lost everything. To everyone who's been following my story and offering support, thank you. Your kind words and advice have been a lifeline during this ordeal. I'll post another update if there are any significant developments, but for now, I'm focusing on healing and moving forward. Wish us luck. After everything that's happened, I think we're going to need it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Wife agreed to an intimate photo shoot with a male model while I was away. The behind-the-scenes pics reveal way more happened than she admitted. This is such a complicated issue, so I will do my best to make it complete but short. My wife is great friends with one of our city's high-end wedding photographers named Gina, 60s or so. She is supremely talented and also a nice person. We have gotten huge discounts on everything from wedding to baby to family pictures. My wife recently lost all her baby weight and became really fit by following a low-carb diet and doing a natural movement workout plan. Gina asked her to come do a Dre shoot for her so she could put my wife's pictures on her website as an example of fit Siggy mom. We had many discussions and I was all for it right from the beginning because it's hot. Wife was worried about employers, friends, and family seeing them, but eventually she figured she'd worked hard. There would be no bears and what the hell. It's very important to know we talked about this nightly for at least a week and went over every eventuality, and I thought everything was on the table. So the pictures are stunning. Gina hired a spectacular makeup artist and my wife looks like a supermodel. I mean, they are spectacular pictures, minimal Photoshop too. When the pics went up on the site, Gina sent me a very classy hardbound book of pictures with a note. Thank you for being so cool with this. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. Important to note the timeline here. Pics taken in May, pics went on website in late June. I got the book this week. Wife is out of town with the baby to visit her mom and dad. Late Wednesday, I got an email from Gina which basically said, "Happy 4th. I wanted you to go through these digital proofs to see if there's any others you like." It's actually a link to a secure site where I have a username and password. So I logged in and all the first series of pictures were variations on ones I'd already seen. Lingerie, overview, implied bare gym wear, and the like. Then it got into a series of full bare pics which I was like, awesome. Why didn't these make it into my book? When I clicked the next page I could clearly see that in the thumbnails there were 2 people. I opened one and it's my wife in sort of an embrace that looked like the cover of a romance novel. The guy also looked like a model and was super ripped. With these I was like, okay, but with all the discussions we had, why didn't she say there would be a guy there? I'd say that series is 50 pictures long with each one getting more and more risque. My wife ends up going from like a business suit to just her underwear. The guy has his underwear on in all of them, but in certain pics he's laying on top of her to look like he's kissing her neck. His hands are definitely on her breasts. He's holding her from behind with his hand just out of shot but implied he to touching her crotch. By far the worst is the last picture where it's just a picture of her crap with his face on the top of her thong and his teeth sort of pulling it away from her body. I looked at the pictures absolutely stunned for 30 minutes. I emailed Gina saying basically, "Gina, what is this? This is way more than I thought it was going to be." She has not replied and I tried to log back in, and my password has been changed and Gina won't send me another one. I tried to call my wife, but she hasn't answered and says she's too busy to talk. I texted, "I had questions about what went on at the photo shoot," and she replied at first, "Sexiness you like?" Now she's not responding at all. So my guess is Gina told her about the slip-up and she doesn't know what to tell me. I'm lost, like literally lost. My wife had so many chances to tell me this was the plan if it was that all along. I don't even think I would have said an outright no, but just asked for some boundaries like don't have the guy's lips near your crap or second base. If my wife didn't know and Gina sprung this on her, why didn't she say no or even enforce her own boundaries? It looked like she was having a great time in the pics. If these are the ones Gina accidentally sent me, are there more? Do they get like literal hardcore? My wife is probably panicking as well right now as I assume Gina is. Neither will speak with me. Wife comes home Sunday morning. How do I even begin to have this conversation with her? What do I say when I see her? Huge edit. Wife came home a day early. We've been talking for the last 2 hours, taking a break from the discussion. Update 1. I got tons of differing advice on the last post, so I guess I will on this one as well and may get ripped apart anyways. So I've been sweating this since I first saw the pictures I wasn't supposed to see on Wednesday. Almost zero contact with my wife. Part of this was she was busy, part of it was because they were at a lake, and part of it she admits now as she was avoiding the conversation. Wife decided to come home early, so 3 hours or so ago now I got a call from her saying, "I'm on my way home. We have a lot of talking to do. Can you please get us Jimmy John's because I'm not stopping to eat and I'm already starving." I was like, seriously, what the F? But avoided the temptation to get into it with her on the phone, which I'm glad of. I got her sandwich. She got home an hour later, we put our son to bed and then got into it. As best I can, this is her side of the story. Gina photographer had mentioned that if my wife was interested she would love to see how she shot with another friend of hers who was a guy. Wife, her name is Nikki, said that she was not at all interested because she was nervous enough about the boudoir/fitness gear. She arrived, had a glass of white wine, relaxed, did the makeup, and she had a great time during the shoot, and Nikki is the one who suggested she would like to do the full bear stuff, so they did that. It went really well, and the conversation came up that maybe she'd like to try shooting with the male model. Nikki swears to me that he was not present, but Gina was able to call him, and he was able to be there in an hour. Nikki says it was a huge mistake not to call me, but she said she was so in the moment that she didn't consider all the ramifications. So the dude shows up, he's 22, 6 feet 3 inches, in amazing build, but Nikki says he was an absolute professional, so much so that all the fun she was having with the solo stuff went out the window because the guy was like literally just a living mannequin. When she was shooting solo there was dancing, laughing, jokes, but with a guy it was like put your hand here, hold, repeat. I said I saw some of the pictures and it didn't look like that at all. She said that there probably are also a few hundred of her looking absolutely terrified and ashamed that didn't make it into the proofs. At this point I demanded to see all of the pictures. Nikki logged into the secure side and there were 10 or so more past the original 50, and basically it went like a sequence from the guy pulling the underwear off with his teeth to her turning over, spreading her legs, and ending with a shot of them from the side looking like he was taking her in the missionary position. I asked her to promise me there weren't more, and it didn't go any further than that. She said it didn't, that the guy never even took off his underwear. I asked if it turned her on. She said in a physical sense of feeling skin on skin it did turn her on, but on an emotional level she was terrified of what I would think, and it was so businesslike there was nothing organic happening at all. I told her this was all fishy because the shoot happened in May. She said almost 6 weeks to tell me, maybe more. She says that she just couldn't find the words but was really working on it. The thing that's sort of gross is that our seg's life has been amazing, and I think the correlation is about when the shoot happened. I had attributed it more towards our son finally sleeping more than 3 hours at a clip, but now I'm not sure. Part of me thinks she was seriously turned on by the whole thing and took that out on me. I told her I wanted her to swear to me that she doesn't know this guy from prior, hasn't kept in touch with him since, and has no plans in the future. She said the guy actually brought his girlfriend with him to the shoot, and she was a gorgeous volleyball player for the local university, and she's pretty sure that he's not trading a 6 feet 1 inch in voluptuous volleyball player for a 30-year-old mother with a 13-month-old. I asked if the girlfriend actually watched the shoot. Nikki said the girl was in the room but sat and scrolled through her phone and seemed bored by the whole thing. I asked who else was in the room. She said it was just Gina and her assistant who held lights and such. After some surfing around Gina's main side and finding other things the guy had done for her, we were able to find his name and Facebook page, and he's a college student and certainly does appear to be dating a very attractive college volleyball player. I asked what Gina was going to do with those pictures because to me it was crazy that Nikki was initially hesitant to even take the Bwire shots because of people seeing her taking what essentially appears to be softcore in less than a week. She said that Gina had no plans for the pictures at all, that they aren't getting posted anywhere. They were just done as test shots since Gina is getting back into boudoir and coups photo shoots and the male model owed her a favor, so it was a great time to practice. I asked why not ask me to do it. She said she didn't have a good answer for that. I asked obviously Gina already made one huge mistake sending them to me or uploading them to my private proof page. How do we know she's not going to make another huge mistake and send them to the wrong person or forget that these were just practice and sell them to someone? Nikki said we are just going to have to trust her. I told her that I was having a really hard time trusting anyone at the moment and I'd need more than that. Nikki said we could talk to Gina at the first opportunity on Monday. I said would she be willing to pay a lawyer to draw up a contract to keep Gina to her word. She said she would. Then we got into why the secrecy. She said that she felt so guilty after the whole thing that she had no idea how to tell me, and she knew she was going to see her family this week, so she had hoped to put off the subject. I asked her how she found out I knew. She said Gina had called her late Wednesday confessing that she had really screwed up. Nikki claims at this point she went into panic mode and pretty much was either crying or clamming up around everyone because she felt so ashamed. I told her how much the silence almost destroyed me and she started crying and said she was so sorry for the whole thing and she knew she screwed up and basically begged me not to leave her, that she still had more love for me than she had anyone. I told her I believed that she loved me, believed she was acknowledging her mistake, but that I felt like uber disrespected and emasculated by the whole thing. She said she could appreciate that and would do whatever she could to make it up to me. I told her I just wasn't sure what that meant yet. She started crying again and begged me not to make any rash decisions about leaving her. I said if she promised me she was telling the truth and it seems like she is, then I'm not leaving her, but I'm not sure what normal will be for us now. She said she'd be willing to do whatever it takes or wait however long for me to figure it out. So that is where we are at. Our son woke up since his sleep schedule is messed up from the drive, so she's tending to him and I'm writing this. I guess aside from the lie of omission about the whole thing, she's never been dishonest with me before, so I believe her about all the details. I mean, they seem so crazy as to be true, and that a lie would be more like normal if that makes any sense. But I still feel so gross about the whole thing. Another guy has touched my wife's breasts. My wife has felt another man's breath on her neck, and another guy has laid on top of her in several different positions. We can never be a married couple that can say we haven't been intimate with other people. I mean, I get the professionalism of it all, but it still happened. I have to learn to live with that. I don't know. That's the update. I don't know if there's more to say or not. Maybe there will be more, I don't know. I'm trying very hard to sort through my feelings and not having much luck. Edit, it's about 6 a.m., totally sleepless night. So based on comments, as soon as my wife is up, I'm going to ask to see her phone, to tell her I'm contacting the girlfriend as she seems like the most neutral party who can verify some details. 3, independently contact Gina and ask to see every single photo that was taken that day. Those are by far the most common responses. I'll update when those 2 are done. Edit 2, heard my wife crying in the next room on the phone, sort of eavesdropped and obvious it was Gina. Nicole was telling her that she needed to come over or send all the pictures from the whole shoot and divorce was on the line and she had to do this. Gina is on her way out of town to shoot a wedding today, but we are rushing over so she can open the studio before she leaves so we can go through all pictures. I told my wife I want to look at her phone on the way over and she said that was fine, she's packing up our son. We are taking our 1-year-old son to a studio where my wife was felt up in order to prove she didn't cheat on me. This has been the most EFF and week of my life. I can update later after, but I'm worried this is exhausting to everyone else as it is to me. Edit 3, so here's where we are now. I looked at my wife's phone on the way over to Gina's studio. Basically on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m., there were 7 missed calls from Gina and my wife's phone. Gina also started a text conversation with her about that time that said, "Please call me, we really need to talk." I crossed it with my email to Gina which said, "This is way more than I thought it was going to be," which I sent at about 6:15 that same day. If you remember, in those 15 minutes I had tried to call my wife, she told me she was too busy to talk. I texted her I wanted to know what happened in the photo shoot. Apparently in those 15 minutes Nikki still thought I didn't know because she texted back, "Sexiness you like?" So clearly when Gina's texts start rolling and she knew that I knew. So their text conversation basically went like, "I really screwed up, not you. This is serious, please call. Can't now, what's wrong? I accidentally put those pics with Craig up on Thomas's preview site. What, please listen, I need to know what you want me to do." I don't understand. Tommy just emailed me about the shoot not being what he thought. It was how would he know you haven't told him yet? No, not planning on it for a while. Crap, that's what I thought. I'm still lost. He's seen the pics of you and Craig. Please follow me. What? How? I'm so sorry. I was rushing to get proofs out and I accidentally uploaded most of them to his preview site. What's most? I mean almost all. Oh my god, Gina, oh my god, what do you want me to do? I'm out of town. I can't leave until Saturday now. What do? I don't know. He's gonna effing flip out. I can change his password so he can't get back in. What if he copies them? Can't copy protected. Please do that. While I think I'm so sorry, Nicole, this was a huge accident. Do you want me to talk to him? No, this better come from me, but I'm gonna throw up. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry. And that was pretty much the only communication between them. No other call or anything. Gina texted her every day, "Are you okay?" type stuff, but Nick never responded. Nikki did text her that she was leaving Saturday morning, but nothing else. So then we got to the studio. Gina was rushing around like crazy because she was driving 2 hours away to do a wedding. I asked her to please talk to me about what she was thinking, so she took like 5 minutes and said that she was so sorry that the thoughts just got away from her and Nikki was doing such an amazing job. It seemed like a great idea at the time. I was at a loss for words, so I didn't ask any more questions. Gina set us up on her main computer and opened the file folder of every single one of Nikki's pictures from that day, including the ones not included in the proofs. I think it was exactly 1,213 pictures from everything. I scrolled through every image and got to the couple shots. I could very clearly tell that the mood had changed in the throwaway pictures from solo to couple. In all the solo shots, Nick was smiling and laughing and having a good time even if the pic didn't turn out. But in the couple shots, I could clearly see that she was nervous. She wasn't having fun. She was that same timid, almost annoyed face I've seen on her a million times. I'd say in the couple section it took 10 pictures to come up with one that looked halfway decent, where her face didn't look like she was being interrogated, and it got worse as she was more and more undressed. You can clearly see that she has a look of genuine disgust when the guy touches her breasts, and it takes a long time for her to make those shots work. There's also a little interlude where I guess Nikki went into the dressing room to compose herself, so Gina took similar shots but with clothes on her. He was still in his underwear with the guy and his girlfriend, and it's very obvious that they both have experience doing this sort of thing. You can also see that when Nick is coming out of the dressing room, Gina took pictures of her alone trying to get the spark back from the solo stuff, and in those pics you can see the girlfriend in the background looked bored as crap on her phone. After the break, Nikki seemed to be a little more relaxed, and that's where they go into him lying down on her back, which goes into the teeth thing and into the very suggestive stuff where it appears he's initiating sex. It takes an abrupt end, and then there's about a dozen shots of everyone who was present doing things like flipping the camera off, sticking their tongues out, and that sort of thing. The weirdest one is of Nikki in a bathrobe and the girlfriend both hugging on the model with smiles on their faces. She says asked for that one because it just seemed like a H shot for everyone to say we're all cool with each other. I was very careful to check the sequencing of the packs. Gina has them all numerically titled with date, a code for customer and location, then series number, and there wasn't a single picture missing, and it would have been an epic undertaking for Gina to rename 1,000 pics to eliminate ones that worse than I already saw, so I'm 99% convinced I saw everything. So now more than ever I'm convinced my wife is telling me the truth about what actually happened. I don't think there was cheating or SIGs. Lots of people would consider what happened cheating. I think it was professional. I think it was spur of the moment when Nikki said she would like to try the couple stuff. The girlfriend was definitely there, so I see no reason to drag her into this. The things I'm still so uncomfortable with. 1. Would she have ever really told me had Gina not accidentally shown me those pics? 2. Why 6 freaking weeks? 3. I think my wife was uncomfortable in the moment, but I think reflection allowed her to realize that she actually really enjoyed the experience. I'm more convinced of this than ever with that shot of her with a huge smile where she and the girlfriend almost look like they are members of a burgeoning herm dedicated to hot abs cool. 4. But having said that, I do think she was embarrassed by initiating the shoot and she was very scared what my reaction was going to be, but it says a lot that she didn't trust me to tell me. So that's where we are now. I guess I'm glad I got to see the pictures, but I don't know if it really cleared anything up. I think she's telling me a version of the truth that's mostly factual, but how the F can I ever know? I'm not leaving her or divorcing her based on what I know now. Part of me is very happy for her that she had a good time. I'm not like the fun police or anything, but I still feel overall terrible about the whole thing. Update 2. First of all, let me say that I really appreciate everyone helping me out. I honestly don't know what I would have done had I not had a place to vent, argue the facts, and bounce things off of. When the other sub removed my post and banned me for just asking why, I really thought I was going to lose my mind because my thoughts were racing a million miles a minute. A very sincere thank you. So if you recall from one of my updates, Nikki agreed that we would sit down with Gina today and get her full side of the story. I spoke with her yesterday, but that was only long enough for her to open the building, get her computer booted up, and then get on the road for her shoot. I told my wife that I would like to talk to Gina alone at first, and she said she had no problems with that. So Gina was very affable and friendly when we sat down at her desk. I asked her if she understood why I was having such a hard time with this. Gina basically said that she did, and she was very, very sorry for the way things shook out. I asked her what's her version of shook out. It more or less matched Nikki's version, and that she had mentioned Nick shooting with the guy about a week prior to the boudoir shoot. Nick had said absolutely not. When the shoot day came, they had an absolutely great time. Nikki suggested they do full bear in what would be a Christmas present for me, and Gina said Nikki was even more relaxed bear, so she reintroduced the idea of shooting with her friend Craig Hot Abs Mole. Nikki said, "What the hell, let's do it." Hot Abs Mole was in class. They drank wine while waiting for him, and all were good and buzzed by the time he showed up. He brought his girlfriend, who Gina has shot for some sort of collegiate volleyball all-star thing, and everyone was fast friends. Gina had the idea of making it like a visual romance novel where the hot businesswoman would succumb to Hot Abs Mole's advances. Mission accomplished. She said Nikki went from having a great time to being super nervous, and Gina said she had to really press to get her to open up. Pun intended, probably not, but I noticed the phrasing. But Nikki did very well, so that's that. I asked her to promise me that there's no other pics. Gina said absolutely not, that you can even look in the metadata if needed to see that everything is in a nice complete sequence. That lasted about an hour. I asked Gina why Nikki, that if this guy's girlfriend already knew how to do this, why not just use her? Remember, GF did the same poses as Nick did while Nick was taking a break. Gina said she just loved shooting with Nikki, and as a photographer, a series of sexy shots where the couple is mismatched is much more interesting than just two good-looking college kids, so that all seemed on the up and up. I mean, it wasn't new news, I had heard that all before. Gina promised me that she wasn't going to do anything with the pictures, and that it really was just a fun session with friends. I don't know what I was thinking, but I asked if I could have a hard drive of all the pictures, and Gina said that usually she would never do that, but because we had been friends for so long and the situation was so unique, that I could. I have no idea why I asked for them. Maybe I can embarrass Nikki with them someday as a prank, and hey, remember that time you almost effed that college kid? Here's a pic, right? Just kidding. I guess Nikki came into the office crying, apologizing to both of us, saying that it was her fault and she felt terrible about the whole thing. Gina was pretty contrite as well, saying that she probably used her friendship with Nikki to push the moment way more than was professionally acceptable. I was able to half-heartedly accept Gina's apology, but I'm just not sure I'm to understanding it yet. So we left. Nikki again begged me not to make any rash decisions about our future. I told her that I'd already said if everything up to this point was the truth, then I'm not leaving, but I can't make any promises as to what normal will be for us now. She said that was okay and recommended that we seek a marriage counselor. I told her that would be great and I'd make every session. She has been a pretty big emotional wreck since she got home on Saturday, and I don't think she slept at all. I haven't. She's been trying very hard to be physical with me, with things like holding my hand, hugging me, sitting next to me on the couch, and that sort of thing. I've been trying to reciprocate, but having a very hard time with it. I know she's hurting, and I should be the one to comfort her, and I'm doing the best I can. Here's the thing, which a lot of you may disagree with, and that's fine. I feel that if I'm going to stay in this marriage, then I need to stay in the marriage 100%. I'm not going to be her warden. I'm not going to ask her to prove where she is, or who she's hanging out with, and I'm not going to look through her phone. I felt gross doing it yesterday, though it was helpful, and I couldn't bring myself to do it again. I feel that if we're married, then we're married. This isn't something to be brought up in an argument, a what about that time you type thing, or an excuse for me to go out and creep on hot Instagram girls. If I'm staying 100%. I can't say with certainty that I can force myself to stick to this, because Nikki can be a nag from hell, and the temptation to pull up a photo and say, why didn't I remember to get gas? Remember that time Hot Abs Mole's 9 inches crap was only separated from your crap by fabric, maybe too much to resist. Yeah, still got a little spite in me. But that last crack aside, she's been through a lot, and the mother of my adorable little kid deserves love and compassion, even if a lot has been of her own making. So I'm gonna go see a movie tonight without her, be mad, call her all sorts of names in my head, scream, punch my steer, will throw rocks into the river, have some scotch, get in a bar fight, whatever. Then tomorrow I'm getting up and I'm going to be the husband I was before she left last Sunday. I'm also going to hit Facebook Gym up and delete a lawyer wasn't my line, but whoever said it on one of the posts really made me laugh. But seriously, in addition to Nikki messing up this little episode, has shown me that I've become a squishy 50-year-old despite the fact that I'm 30. A huge reason Nikki and Gina didn't even think to ask me to participate in that shoot is that I don't even resemble a guy who could be with my wife anymore. She's very attractive, and while I've got a decent base to work with, I'm not anymore. She looks better than she did in the wedding pictures Gina took for us. I look far worse. So if I'm going to be in this marriage 100%, I need to also be 100% myself, or the person I was when I was a practicing purple belt in BJJ or a walk onto my college baseball team. That's been the hardest but probably the most productive part of this whole situation, is to have to look myself in the mirror and admit your wife did a softcore crap shoot, and while she still loves you, you've let yourself go so bad that she didn't even think to include you. So already signed back up for BJJ tomorrow, and I'm going to talk to my professor about being an instructor again. I'm going to join Nikki in her paleo craziness and maybe even her funky crap move in class, hopefully use this episode to make myself a better person. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and a serious thank you again. Edit 1 in the morning. So this has been such a crazy experience, and I've seen the absolute best and worst of Reddit, but also some truly helpful people who genuinely seem to care about a stranger and his wife, whether they agreed with his course of action or not. PMs and comments are still rolling in, and I'll keep responding if people are interested in my nonsense. Just to put this to rest from the PMS, I'm not sharing the pics. I'm not linking Gina's page. You're gonna have to take my word for it that Nikki is as cute as I say. If you had to do that old game of what celebrity do you resemble, Nick has black hair and striking blue eyes, fit now, and not super curvy but balanced, if that makes sense for those who keep asking. That's the best I'm gonna do. And yes, I'm bragging that my wife is quite hot. I look like smashed crap served on a cracker, but self-esteem is at an all-time low, and I'm hungover like crazy, and Uber is taking forever, and I have to get my car and still get to work, and I'm at least 2 hours late now. I'm gonna close the door to my office and sleep this off. Have a good one, everyone. Update 3. There's 2 reasons I'm not going to insist on my wife never being friends with Gina again. I think that if I say something like cut Gina out of your life, it allows my wife to say okay, do it, but then she gets to place all the blame on someone who is no longer her friend, in essence giving her the chance to say, remember when that former friend made me do all those terrible things? She's gone now, and I'm all good. Not sure if that made make sense or not. Secondly, it demanding who she be friends with puts me back in that position of being her warden or jailer. If she's organically not friends anymore, no issues, but I've never been one to tell her who her friends are, and if I start now, then I'm truly acting like a victim. People are making a huge issue of my comments on my looks. I just want to clear, I'm not blaming her decision on my chubby crap face. She was doing the initial boudoir stuff for me after all, but I am saying that when it came time for man's skin and underwear to join the party, neither one of them thought, who's the guy to make these look hot? My husband, if that makes sense. When I met Nikki, I was a college baseball player. I was in shape. I ran marathons for fun. I instructed jiu-jitsu in what little spare time I had. At times I had a cool hipster beard and long hair I could put in a ponytail, and cool ironic nerd glasses. I used to be a handsome guy, but I love fast food and soda, and 8 years later I'm not the guy who gets invited to strip down to my underwear for pictures. For myself and Nikki, I need to change that. The one thing that people just aren't hearing me on is that Nikki is probably the least deceptive person I've ever met, present circumstances included. She's just not like that at all. She comes from a very sheltered background and has almost no street smarts or hustle in her. I love that about her because her naivety can be really cute sometimes. She follows the rules, stops for yellow lights, returns her library books on time. I mean, she's as vanilla as a person can be. Nikki was so nervous just trying to get the prank going that she was shaking like a leaf. Her voice was cracking, and I could instantly tell she was up to something. She has zero game, zero. I think was able to get away with not telling me for 6 weeks because in her head she wasn't being dishonest, because I never asked, did you have a photo shoot with a dude, but I'm sure it still annoyed her, and she says it did. Knowing her for 10 years, I'm surprised she didn't give herself an ulcer. I know people don't believe me on this, and that's cool, but I've known her long enough to know what is and isn't plausible in this whole situation. Update 4. Wife and I basically decided to work things out, and here's the update. So out of the blue I logged into this account because I needed a throwaway, and even though this saga was almost 5 months ago, there were 6 requests for updates in the inbox, so here goes. Basically everything is great between my wife and I. Like I said in the last update above, I was still upset by the whole thing, but I was going to put it all behind me, and I did just that. I didn't become her zookeeper. I never asked to check her phone, and I never asked her to check in with me other than the obvious that affected her or our kids' safety. I had a few rough days in the immediate aftermath of all this, but as life began to move forward and we had other issues, hot water heater going out, minor car problems, strep throat, this sort of faded into the background. I guess if I can give one piece of advice that I learned from all this is that if you're going to stay with a person after they've screwed up, stay with them and don't become their keeper. I still love my wife very much, and she knows that she messed up, but her love for me has never been in doubt, and I'm so glad that I never gave her a reason to stop loving me. One thing that people really keyed in on was my own lack of self-respect. Well, one thing I did do was really focus on getting myself back into physical shape after a pretty long, slow decline. 5 months later, I'm back into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with a vengeance. I've lost almost 30 pounds, and I'm living a mostly keto lifestyle with a cheat day on Sundays. I feel and look better than I have in years, and a side benefit of that is that our seg's life has taken off like crazy, and I'm loving it. My wife definitely learned that one of her kinks is being naughty in front of a camera, so our VB has gotten to see some things that aren't appropriate for school or church, if you catch my meaning. So all is good in our household. Thank you everyone for keeping up with our story. Things are good, and I appreciate all the advice that I got on those first 3 posts. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Hi everyone. I'm Adam, a 29-year-old guy from Boston, and I'm still angry from what happened just a few days ago. I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am, trying to make sense of the mess my life has become. I guess I should start from the beginning. I met Rachel 4 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of indie rock and obscure sci-fi novels. Within a few months, we were inseparable. Rachel was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. Smart, funny, and kind, or so I thought. Our relationship progressed quickly. We moved in together after a year, adopted a rescued dog named Buddy, and started talking about our future. Last year, on our 3rd anniversary, I proposed. Rachel said yes, and we began planning our dream wedding. Everything seemed perfect. Our families were thrilled, our friends were excited, and we were on cloud 9. We spent months planning every detail, from the venue, a beautiful vineyard just outside the city, to the menu, a selection of our favorite cuisines. Rachel's parents, Tom and Linda Miller, were incredibly supportive, both emotionally and financially. They insisted on covering most of the wedding costs, saying it was their gift to us. My parents, Alex and Amanda, were equally enthusiastic. They threw us an engagement party and helped with the planning process. Our families got along well, which made everything even better. It felt like the stars had aligned, and I was about to start the next chapter of my life with a woman I loved. The wedding was set for last Saturday. We had about 150 guests confirmed, including family and friends from all over the country. Some had already flown in, staying at nearby hotels. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for Friday night, and everyone was looking forward to the big day. Then, last Thursday, just 2 days before the wedding, my world came crashing down. I had taken the day off work to handle some last-minute wedding details. Rachel was supposed to be at her final dress fitting with her mom and bridesmaids. I was at home double-checking our honeymoon reservations when I received a text from my best friend and best man, Liam. The message simply read, "Call ASAP. It's important." Confused and a bit worried, I called Liam immediately. What he told me next felt like a punch to the gut. Liam works at a software company downtown, and he had just seen Rachel entering a nearby hotel with another man. He said they were holding hands and acting very intimate. First, I couldn't believe it. I trusted Rachel completely. There had to be some explanation, right? Maybe it was a relative in town for the wedding, or a friend she was meeting for lunch. But as Liam described the scene in more detail, my heart sank. He said Rachel and this man had kissed before entering the hotel, and it definitely wasn't a platonic kiss. I felt sick to my stomach. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I just heard. I thanked Liam for telling me and hung up. For a few minutes, I just sat there, stunned. Then, almost on autopilot, I grabbed my keys and drove to the hotel Liam had mentioned. I parked across the street and waited. After what felt like hours but was probably only about 45 minutes, I saw them exit the hotel. Rachel, my fiancée, the woman I was supposed to marry in 2 days, was arm in arm with a tall, dark-haired man I'd never seen before. They were laughing and looked completely at ease with each other. As they walked down the street, I saw Rachel lean up and kiss him. It wasn't a quick peck on the cheek. It was a deep, passionate kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I felt like I was watching a nightmare unfold in front of me. I don't remember driving home. I must have, because the next thing I knew I was sitting on our couch, staring at the wall. Buddy, our dog, sensed something was wrong and kept nudging my hand, whining softly. I couldn't even bring myself to pet him. Rachel came home a few hours later, acting as if nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek and started chattering about her day, talking about the dress fitting and how excited she was for the wedding. I couldn't believe how easily she was lying to my face. I waited until she finished talking. Then I simply asked, "Who is he, Rachel?" The color drained from her face. She tried to play dumb at first, asking what I meant, but I told her everything about Liam's call, about seeing her at the hotel. I asked her how long it had been going on, how she could do this to me, to us just days before our wedding. Rachel broke down crying, begging me to let her explain. Through her tears, she told me that the man was Jack, an ex-boyfriend from college. They had reconnected a few months ago on social media, and things had escalated quickly. She swore it was just a physical thing, that she still loved me and wanted to marry me. I was devastated. The woman I thought I knew, the future I had planned, it all crumbled in an instant. I told Rachel to get out. I couldn't even look at her. She tried to argue, to beg for another chance, but I was done. I told her the wedding was off and that I never wanted to see her again. After Rachel left, I sat in our apartment, surrounded by wedding gifts and reminders of the life we were supposed to start together. I felt numb. Then, as the shock wore off, anger set in. I thought about all the people who were coming to celebrate our wedding, about the money and time invested in this wedding, and I made a decision. I started making calls, first to my parents, then to Rachel's. I told them everything. I called our wedding planner and started the process of canceling everything. Then, I drafted a message and sent it to all our guests, explaining that the wedding was off due to Rachel's infidelity. Looking back, I know sending that mass message was probably an impulsive decision, but in that moment, I wanted everyone to know the truth. I didn't want Rachel to be able to spin the story or make me out to be the bad guy. The aftermath has been chaotic, to say the least. Rachel's parents were shocked and embarrassed. They've been calling and texting, alternating between apologizing to me and defending their daughter. My parents are furious with Rachel and her family, feeling like we've been deceived and used. Some of Rachel's friends have reached out, calling me names for humiliating her publicly. Others, including some mutual friends, have expressed their support for me and their disappointment in Rachel. The financial aspect is another mess. Rachel's parents want their money back for the wedding expenses, but many things are non-refundable at this point. There's talk of legal action, though I'm not sure how serious that is. In the midst of all this, I'm left trying to pick up the pieces of my life. I've moved out of our apartment, and I'm staying with my parents for now. Buddy is with me. There was no way I was leaving him behind. I've taken some time off work to deal with everything, but I know I'll have to face reality soon. So, Reddit, I turn to you. Am I the a-hole for exposing my cheating fiancé and canceling our wedding at the last minute? I'm torn between feeling relieved that I found out before we got married and feeling completely lost about what to do next. Any advice or perspective would be appreciated. Thanks for reading this far, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Update 1. Hey everyone, it's Adam again. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank you all for your support and advice. It really helped me navigate through one of the toughest periods of my life. I promised an update, so here goes. First off, I want to address something many of you pointed out in the comments. You're right. I acted impulsively when I sent that mass message exposing Rachel's infidelity. In the heat of the moment, it felt justified, but looking back, I realized it wasn't the most mature way to handle things. I've had time to reflect on this, and I acknowledge that my actions, while understandable, weren't entirely right. Now, let me catch you up on what's been going on since then. The immediate aftermath of canceling the wedding was chaotic, to say the least. My phone was blowing up with messages and calls from friends, family, and even some of Rachel's relatives. It was overwhelming, and I ended up turning off my phone for a few days just to get some peace. My parents have been incredibly supportive, letting me stay with them and helping me deal with the practical aspects of unraveling a life I thought I was going to share with Rachel. Mom's been making all my favorite meals, and Dad's been taking me fishing on weekends. Simple things, but they mean the world to me right now. Buddy, now my dog has been a huge comfort too. There's something therapeutic about having a furry friend who loves you unconditionally. He's been sticking to me like glue, almost as if he can sense that I need the extra support. The situation with Rachel's family has been complicated. Rachel's parents were understandably upset when I first told them about Rachel's infidelity. They were shocked and embarrassed, especially since they had invested so much emotionally and financially in the wedding. At first, they were calling and texting constantly, alternating between apologizing to me and defending Rachel. They insisted that Rachel's actions were out of character and begged me to reconsider, to give her another chance. But I knew in my heart that the trust was broken beyond repair. The financial aspect of canceling the wedding has been a nightmare. As I mentioned before, many things were non-refundable at that point. The Millers initially threatened legal action to recoup their expenses, which added another layer of stress to an already tense situation. After a week of back and forth through emails and phone calls, we finally agreed to sit down and talk things through like adults. It was a difficult meeting, to say the least. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown, to discuss how to handle the financial fallout. Rachel's parents were visibly uncomfortable, and honestly, so was I. We spent hours going over the expenses, trying to figure out what could be refunded and what couldn't. In the end, we came to a compromise. I agreed to cover the costs of anything that was specifically for me, my tuxedo, the groomsman's attire, and a few other smaller items. The Millers would handle the costs related to Rachel and anything that was jointly planned, like the venue and catering. It wasn't a perfect solution, and I could tell they weren't entirely happy with it, but given the circumstances, it seemed like the fairest way to handle things. We all left that meeting feeling drained, but with a sense that at least this part of the mess was somewhat resolved. As for Rachel, that's been the hardest part of all this. Despite my initial anger and the hurt of her betrayal, a small part of me still cared for her. For years of love and shared experiences don't just disappear overnight, no matter how much you might want them to. Rachel has tried to contact me numerous times since that day. At first, I ignored all her calls and messages. I needed time and space to process everything. But after about 2 weeks, I finally agreed to meet with her. I felt I owed it to myself and to the relationship we once had to hear her out. We met at a park near our old apartment. It was a sunny day, but the atmosphere between us was anything but bright. Rachel looked terrible. Puffy eyes, messy hair, nothing like the put-together woman I used to know. As soon as she saw me, she burst into tears. Rachel poured out apologies, explanations, and pleas for forgiveness. She told me more about Jack, the ex-boy she had cheated with. Apparently, they had reconnected at a conference a few months before the wedding. One thing led to another, and before she knew it, she was caught up in an affair. She swore it was just a physical thing, that she had never stopped loving me. She said she had ended things with Jack as soon as I found out and that she realized what a huge mistake she had made. Rachel begged me to reconsider, to give her another chance. She said we could postpone the wedding, go to couples therapy, anything to save our relationship. I listened to everything she had to say, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't affect me. Seeing her so broken, hearing the pain in her voice, it stirred up a lot of conflicting emotions. For a brief moment, I even considered the possibility of trying to work things out. But then I remembered the sight of her kissing Jack outside the hotel. I thought about the ease with which she had lied to me, how she had been planning our wedding while secretly meeting another man, and I knew deep down that there was no going back. I told Rachel that while I appreciated her apology, I couldn't forgive her. The trust between us was irreparably broken. I explained that even if we tried to move past this, I would always have doubts, always be wondering if she was really where she said she was, if she was telling me the truth. That's no way to live, and certainly no foundation for a marriage. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. Rachel broke down completely, and it took every ounce of willpower I had not to comfort her. But I knew I had to stand firm. I wished her well, told her I hoped she would find happiness, and then I walked away. It felt like closing the final chapter on a book I once thought would be my life story. In the weeks since then, I've been focusing on healing and moving forward. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. It's been incredibly helpful to have a neutral party to talk to, someone who can help me navigate the complex emotions I'm dealing with. I've also been leaning on my friends more than ever. Liam, my best friend who initially tipped me off about Rachel's affair, has been checking in on me regularly. He's been great about getting me out of the house, whether it's for a game of basketball or just a beer at our favorite local pub. My other close friends have been supportive too. They've been patient with me, listening when I need to vent, distracting me when I need to get out of my head. I'm realizing more and more how lucky I am to have such a solid support system. Work has been another focus. After taking some time off to deal with the immediate aftermath of the canceled wedding, I threw myself back into my job. It's been a welcome distraction, and I've even taken on some new projects that I'm excited about. As for my living situation, I'm still staying with my parents for now. I've started looking for a new apartment, but I'm not rushing into anything. Being around family has been comforting, and I'm grateful for the stability it provides while I figure out my next steps. The situation with Rachel's friends and some of our mutual acquaintances remains tense. A few of Rachel's closest friends are still angry with me for the way I exposed her infidelity. They've sent some nasty messages, accusing me of humiliating Rachel unnecessarily. While I understand their loyalty to her, it still stings to be painted as the bad guy by people I once considered friends. On the flip side, many of our mutual friends have reached out to express their support for me. Some have shared that they're no longer in contact with Rachel, feeling that her actions were a betrayal not just of me, but of all the people who cared about us as a couple. It's bittersweet. I appreciate their support, but I hate that this situation has caused rifts in so many relationships. One of the hardest parts of all this has been dealing with the aftermath of the canceled wedding. There were so many little details that I never even considered until I had to start undoing them all. Returning wedding gifts, canceling honeymoon reservations, updating all the people who weren't on the main guest list but still knew about the wedding, vendors, coworkers, distant relatives. But slowly, surely, I'm starting to see a future beyond this pain. I've started setting new goals for myself, both personally and professionally. I'm considering taking some classes to further my career, something I had put on hold while focusing on wedding planning. I've also been thinking about doing some traveling on my own, maybe taking the trip to Europe I've always dreamed about. As for the question of whether I was the a-hole for exposing Rachel's infidelity and canceling the wedding, well, I've had a lot of time to think about that. The overwhelming consensus from my original post was that I wasn't the a-hole for canceling the wedding. That part I'm sure about. I couldn't have gone through with marrying someone who had betrayed my trust so completely. The exposure part is trickier. Many of you pointed out that while my anger was justified, sending that mass message was an impulsive and potentially hurtful action. After a lot of reflection, I tend to agree. In an ideal world, I would have taken some time to cool down and then found a more measured way to inform people about the canceled wedding. That said, I don't think I can fully regret my actions. In that moment, angry from the shock and pain of betrayal, I acted on raw emotion. It wasn't perfect, but it was human. I'm learning to forgive myself for not handling everything flawlessly in a situation I never expected to be in. So, where do I go from here? Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. But for the first time since this all happened, I'm starting to feel hopeful about the future. I'm not ready to think about dating again, not by a long shot. Right now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life on my own terms. To those of you who offered advice and support on my original post, thank you. Your words meant more than you know. To anyone out there going through something similar, hang in there. It gets better. It's not easy and it's not quick, but it does get better. And to Rachel, if by some chance you're reading this, I meant what I said. I hope you find happiness. I hope we both learn and grow from this experience. But I also hope you understand that our chapter together is closed for good. Thank you all for listening, for caring, and for being a part of this journey with me. Your support has meant the world. Here's to new beginnings, to healing, and to whatever the future may hold. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Dumped my GF 15 years ago because I didn't want kids. Now I'm back in her town missing her like crazy. I've been tearing myself apart just thinking about her and how things ended. I can't stop no matter how much I try. This is going to be a long post. When I, 37M, was 20, I met the most beautiful woman, Lila, who was 19 at the time. She was beautiful both inside and out. She had the most gorgeous dark brown hair that looked red and purple when the light hit it just right, these golden brown eyes and lashes that looked like ad dolls, freckles on her rosy plump cheeks, and a single dimple when she smiled a certain way. She was a year younger than me, but yet she was always so much smarter and mature in every aspect. We dated for 2 years. I met her parents, and her no-nonsense cop father definitely gave me the stank eye at first, but he grew to like me. Her mom adored me right off the bat, always commenting on how my green eyes complemented her daughter's golden brown eyes in the most romantic way. I still don't fully understand what that means, but I like the compliment. Her younger siblings loved playing in the backyard with me. She met my parents and my 2 brothers, and they all loved her right off the bat. My younger brother was the same age as her, and they were going to college together and would help each other study in some of the shared classes their majors had. Hell, even my 6-month-old dog I had adopted before even meeting her seemed to like her more than he liked me. She told me her dreams, how she wanted to own a home that was tucked away from everything but not completely isolated, how she wanted to be a doctor and that she wanted to help people. She wanted to be a pediatrician. She loved kids. She always said she wanted a family. She didn't care how many kids she had. She just wanted to experience the ups and downs of motherhood. She wanted the good, the bad, the ugly. I listened to her go on and on about baby names and how she would design a nursery. At the time, I thought I wanted kids too. I wanted to marry this girl and give her the family she so clearly wanted. She was my Lila. I wanted to stay with her forever. I was young, but I was in love with her. After 2 years of dating, I started to realize that I didn't want to have kids. I thought I was just being around too many of my brat cousins and that was turning me off from the idea, but the more I thought about it, the more the idea of having to be a father made me sick. I would get headaches and my stomach would twist in knots thinking about having to take care of some screaming, crying little thing and then have it grow into a tantrum-throwing toddler, a bratty child, and then some moody teenager. I didn't want to be held down like that. I wanted to travel, have money, be free. After a few drinks one night, I ended up telling all of this to Lila. I remember she went quiet and simply said, "I won't try and change your mind, but I'm not giving up my dreams." I remember scoffing and rolling my eyes, telling her that we weren't going to have kids. She stood up from the couch and said, "You might not want that anymore, but I still do. I'm not going to try and force either one of our minds to change. Then one of us will end up miserable." I realized she was breaking up with me, and even though she was so calm and mature about it, I remember feeling so angry. She was walking around the apartment, gathering her things and being completely silent. I kept arguing with her, trying to change her mind. I kept telling her that it was stupid to want kids, that they were annoying and a waste of time. When she still didn't budge, I started to insult her. I said she was stupid, that she was a weak woman for wanting to be a mom, that she should just give up on being a doctor so she could push out her brats. Lila finally started to respond to me, telling me to calm down, that we simply wanted different things in life and that was okay. I hated her in that moment, that she wasn't agreeing with me. I remember punching the wall of our apartment, kicking a door, throwing anything I could get my hands on. She watched me wreck our living room and kitchen, not saying a word. She walked past me and left. This whole thing happened over a few hours. In less than a day, I lost the love of my life, and my apartment was now trashed. Of course, news of why we broke up and my reaction to it reached my family. My mom cried hearing how I reacted. My dad gave me the coldest look I'd ever seen. My brothers both said I was an idiot, with my younger brother saying I was lucky Lila hadn't called the cops on me during that. That was 15 years ago. I've tried to have relationships since, but they never lasted more than a few weeks. I travel around for work, but now I'm back in the same town Lila lives in. Lila got married, got her doctorate, had kids, and is still a pediatrician, last I heard. I know my younger brother still kept some contact with her in the first few years after the breakup. He even invited her to his wedding, but she declined because she didn't want to cause drama. I'm back in her town, the town we both grew up in, dated in, lived in, and where she currently lives. I can't stop thinking about her. I miss her so much right now. I miss her sweet perfume that smelled like a bakery, her strawberry shampoo, the way her hair looks in the light. She's 36 now, and I want to reach out to her and make amends with her. I want to hold and hug her one last time, to tell her I love her and I'm sorry. I don't know if that's a good idea, but a part of me needs closure. I don't know what to do. I want to sweep her off her feet and have her be my love again, but I don't know if that ship has sailed already. Date 1. I have a date with my ex tomorrow and I'm nervous. August 11th, 2024. I recently reached out to an ex-girlfriend of mine to see about meeting up and catching up on life. I didn't expect her to respond to me, as we ended on bad terms. She responded. We ended up messaging for a while and did some catching up. I finally asked her if she'd be willing to see me in person and said she'd be willing to meet up with me. I'm over the moon, but I'm also nervous about going on a date with her. She's 36, and I'm 37, and our last time being on dates with one another was close to 15 years ago. Our date is tomorrow evening after she gets off work. I'm scared I'll mess things up again. I already feel like she's being too generous with me by even agreeing to speak to me again, let alone see me in person, but I'll take any chance I can to try and make things right with her. I can't shake this horrible feeling in the back of my throat that I'll mess something up, that I'll just end up more heartbroken than before, that I'll come on too strong and she won't want to see me ever again. I've bought her favorite flowers for her. I've already made sure to start wearing her favorite cologne of mine from all those years ago. I've been practicing what I need and what I want to say to her. I have no idea how this date's going to go, but I just need to type out these feelings of nervousness I have. Update 2. August 15th, 2024. Following my last post, I reached out to Lila. I had to. I know a lot of people wanted me to never contact her again, despite how I wanted to make amends with her. So I reached out to her, and she responded, and we chatted back and forth a bit. After a bit of this, I asked her if she wanted to meet up and basically let her set all the ground rules. She agreed, and 3 days ago we went out on a date. She is just as beautiful as she was when we were together. Her figure filled out, and she finally lost the baby fat on her face. But she was still the same woman I fell in love with all those years ago. We sat down and talked. I didn't want to talk much about myself, but she asked about my life, so I had to. She asked about my job, my family, how I'd been, typical catching up stuff. I'll admit I was zoned out for most of this, and I was operating on autopilot to keep my nerves from taking over. I just wanted to grab her and hold her, kiss her, make her mine again. I don't think I realized just how much I missed her until she was right in front of me. Finally, when she was done asking about me, I finally got to ask about her and how she's been. She got married 11 years ago, so 4 years after our breakup. She has 2 daughters, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. I saw how happy she was when she talked about them, and I couldn't help but feel jealous and guilty. I should have been the one to have children with her, but I was stupid, and now she had kids with someone that wasn't me. I asked about her husband, and it turns out she's a widow. He died 7 years ago while she was pregnant with her youngest. It was unexpected, according to her, but that she's done her best to move on and hold herself together and appear unaffected by it all for her daughters. I asked her if she was seeing anyone, and she said no. I asked her if she ever thought about me after our breakup, and she got vague with her answers. I told her she could tell me blunt what she was thinking. Lila said that she was very depressed after our breakup. She had built a future of us in her head, and she felt like I broke it on a whim with no warning. She said she lost her first real relationship and all the dreams she had with me when we broke up. She admitted that she had been so attached and in love with me that for a while she almost tried to convince herself that she didn't want kids. But no matter what she did, she couldn't stop herself from wanting to be a mom, and she knew that if she gave that up voluntarily, she would be miserable for the rest of her life. I asked her if I scared her that night, if she felt threatened by me at all. She said the yelling overwhelmed her, and while the commotion frightened her, she wouldn't say she feared for her safety or life, so that gave me hope. I apologized to her about how we broke up and told her I had regretted everything I did and said that night. She said she had moved on and forgiven me years ago. She always was a very forgiving and kind person, part of the reason I fell in love with her in the first place. I asked her if she was willing to give me another chance and let me back in her life. She was hesitant and got quiet for a moment. I could feel myself panicking when that happened. She said that she didn't mind me being in her life, but that I'd have to regain her trust in order for her to consider even trying to date me. I was disappointed, frustrated, and very disheartened, but I knew if I came on too strong, she'd turn me away completely. I told her I'd be happy to be in her life any way that I can, and that with her permission. I'd be working to prove I deserved a second chance at romance. I'm happy to have Lila back in my life, and I'm going to work on proving to her that we should get back together. I hope that we can have the family and life she always talked to me about. I know there's still time, but the clock is ticking on it. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Foster parents kicked me out suddenly after 11 years because they used to get $52,000 a year for me, so they chose money over me and got a new kid. I, 18M, was told earlier today that I need to pack up and leave by the end of the week. I still feel in shock. I was removed from my biological family when I was 7 due to issues with my parents. I was then placed in foster care and then matched with a couple who I will call the Peters. It's not their real name. No matter how much I actually want to blast their real info, I won't. The Peters were always really nice to me, and since I moved in when I was pretty young, after a while I started to consider them my parents. I called them Mom and Dad, treated them as my parents, treated their biological son as my brother. I wasn't their only foster child. They also have a 99-year-old boy who has lived with us for a little over a year. I was never adopted by them. I know why, because they live off the fostering allowance, something that never really bothered me. They told me that it didn't matter and that legality didn't make us a family, which I believed. I went on their agency website earlier today, and I found out that they are getting paid at least £2,400 for me per month, or at least they were since I turned 18. They stopped getting the allowance. However, they applied for a staying-put arrangement for me, which meant they would continue getting paid something as they continue to support me and let me live with them. It wasn't as much, I think it was like £1,000 per month. They told me they had it approved until I was 21, so I thought I'd be able to stay at least until I finished uni. They sat me down today and told me I had to leave. They told me that fostering is a business and that they couldn't afford to keep me on just the stay-put arrangement allowance. They told me I had until the end of the week. 4 days, how generous of them. They said they need my room because they want to get a new foster placement. They literally told me, "It's not personal. Like that makes me feel any better." They said they would still consider me like a son, not their son anymore, like a son, and that they want to keep in touch. What a joke. They choose to kick me out, an 18-year-old with no job, no income, no nothing, about to start university. Yet their bio son who is 25 gets to stay. So yeah, I guess me, right? I'm just the one no one ever wanted. I guess I wasn't ever truly part of their family. Comments. Comment. Responding to Candid Spot 515. Oop, you were 7 when you went into their care. They denied you the opportunity to find a real family who love you for you and not the dollar you brought in them. You deserve better. Opie. Responding to C94. I doubt anyone would have adopted me. I wasn't a great kid, in truth had more issues than a hospital piss pot. I wasn't a great kid in any sense, but I changed, genuinely I changed. I can't help but wonder if this is because of how I was as a young child. Mini update. Okay. Thank you guys for all your advice. Honestly, I was in a state of shock yesterday, maybe still am today. I wasn't thinking straight. I only slept 2 hours last night, that's also so I'm probably a little delirious today as well. Firstly, I have contacted my personal advisor. He'll having an emergency meeting with me at 1:30, so I'll have more details about what's going to happen to me then. He'll hopefully be able to sort out emergency accommodation for me. Secondly, to those of you saying the Peters can't legally just give me 4 days notice to leave, I will definitely be mentioning this to my PA and get his advice on it. I don't want to stay here any longer than I need to because since they told me it's like I don't exist, they just look right through me, but I'm not going to move out until I have safe accommodation for me. I will outright refuse. I am not going to be made homeless. Thirdly, those of you saying contact my uni, I have an offer from them, but it's only conditional if I get my predicted A levels. Hopefully I will, but since I'm not technically a student yet, I don't know if they will actually provide any support yet. Finally, I am also going to ensure that the staying put allowance stops. I will tell my PA today that it should surely be stopped if I'm not living with them. Luckily, I have some money saved. Some people here have said I should be entitled to a berayer when I start uni, and I'll have my maintenance student loan to help me. I've already started looking for a job. Update 1. Okay, hi everyone. I just got home and I'm feeling incredibly tired, so this is just going to be a short update. Basically, I had a big long meeting with my PA and he was very sympathetic and felt upset that the Peters are treating me this way. We had one meeting and then I went to get food while he spoke to the P directly, and then I came back to meet him again to let me know everything that has happened. He's putting me on the list for social housing. I am hopeful that it will not be long until I'm able to get my own house. I recorded the meeting because I'm so sleep deprived, and also I have really bad memory processing for long things like that because of my dyslexia, SL, autism or something, I'm not sure. I can listen to it again tomorrow after I've slept, but from what I gather, they will help me with paying for rent costs. I will also get some money to help pay for furniture and things like that. When he spoke to the Peters, I don't know if he said they had to keep me housed for a while or asked them to. I'm not sure. But they've agreed to keep housing me until the end of August, so at least I don't have to worry about everything happening in 3 days' times. He did tell me that if I feel uncomfortable, I can be moved into a youth hostel place while they wait for a property to be available for me. But I said if I can, I would rather stay with the Peters until I'm ready to move, even if it makes me feel a little uncomfortable. He told me they will continue getting paid the staying put allowance until the day I officially move out, and then it will be stopped. On a completely separate note, my best friend and I had a huge argument earlier. He said that I'm being grateful, and honestly what he said really hurt me. We had a huge argument. I just thought out of everyone, he would get me and understand what I was going through. Maybe not, maybe I'm being unreasonable. I am really tired, so maybe my emotions are just not being controlled well at the moment. I am going to talk to him tomorrow after I've slept, and I'm hoping this argument will just blow over because I need him at the moment. I don't feel like I have anyone else. Oh, and I haven't read all comments because I didn't expect to get so many. Thank you everyone who have offered support. It is genuinely so sweet and I am so thankful. Comments. Comment. Glad things are working out. Don't worry about your friend. Right now you are in survival mode, trying to make sure you aren't on the streets. Hope everything keeps working out for you. Opie. Responding to Jana 820, he said I should be grateful that they kept me that long anyway. Like I'm not a pet. He also said some other things like how it's good that they're going to help another child like I was, which is true, and I get that it's a good thing what they're doing to help people, but him saying those things make me feel like I'm being crazy for wanting to stay like I was promised by them. I'm too tired and maybe I'm being irrational. I'm going to talk again with him tomorrow and say I'm sorry. Update 2. Long and unimportant rant. It never bothered me that they were paid to keep me before, genuinely never bothered me at all. I always knew I was a foster child. I was about 15 when I learned that they were paid money to look after me, and I told myself it was a good thing, and it probably was. I got loving parents for 11 years, which is more than some people can say. I just didn't ever think they'd make me move out when the payments stopped being as high. I found out that when I was still a child, they were paid £182 per day for me. That's £4,814 per year. I had never felt different to the family. I'd always felt loved and secure. I don't understand why they have changed their minds about me. None of them will even look at me in the eyes anymore, and it's gotten to the point where I can't leave my room anymore because all I feel is the absence of the love that used to be there. I didn't come down for any mealtimes, which was a rule that you had to before. If I didn't go down before, I wouldn't have gotten any food. But Mom brought it up to my room and knocked on the door to say she was going to leave it there for me. I've used it 100 times over and over again in my head to try and convince myself that they still love me. I called her by her first name when I came home yesterday. Not Mom. Claire. She looked upset when I did that, and a part of me is happy about that, and a part of me feels cruel for it. I knew it would hurt her, and I did it anyway. In some ways, I wish she wakes up to the pain she's causing me. I hope she takes it back and says that it is a lapse in judgment and that she loves me and wants me to stay. But if that were going to come, I think it would have already. I guess I'm not worth the £76 per day they lose by not replacing me with another foster child. When I feel bad about hurting them, I remind myself they're kicking me out to get an extra £76 a day. That's what I'm worth to them, £76 per day. Update 3. Whipped for going NC with the family that raised me for 11 years. Okay, I'm gonna try and condense this as much as possible. Basically, I, 18M, got removed from my bio family when I was 7. I got taken into foster care and was matched with a family called the Peters. I was then raised by the Peters for the remainder of my life from S all the way until now. They had originally told me that I was able to live with them indefinitely as I consider the Peters my family, and they applied for a staying put order with me, which basically means they continued to get paid something like £250 by the government to recognize that they're continuing to support a former foster child, me, after my 18th birthday. As I said before, I was always told by the Peters I could say as long as I needed to set myself up in life. Their bio son, who I considered my brother, is 25 and still lives with them. He doesn't work but did graduate university 2 years ago. I have a conditional offer at a local university which I'm studying classics with ASES to become a teacher. I start in October if I get my predicted A levels, which I think I will. But the Peters told me that I had to leave by the end of the week because they wanted to get another foster child. This is something they really sprung on me, and it's been extremely difficult for me. I had to get in contact with my social worker who spoke with the Peters, and now they're letting me stay until the end of August, but the whole family has changed. I explained all this to my best friend, and I said I was considering going NC with them after I moved out. He ranted to me about being ungrateful and being to them and how they raised me for 11 years and now they want to give that to another child in a position like I was. I get that, and that's part of the reason why I feel so guilty. My friend isn't speaking to me now, calling me selfish for wanting to stay with the Peters like I was promised and for them trying to get rid of me with 4 days' notice. There were plans they could have taken to transition me into independent living before I turned 18, and they chose not to take part in them because they told me I could always stay with them. The one time of my life I needed my friend, and he's gone too, and I feel so alone, and I can't understand why he's taking their side over mine. I understand the argument that they will continue to help another child, but at the same time, I just wish they didn't have to throw me out to do so. When I suggested to my friend they could have asked their bio son to move out instead of me, and he just said I'm being selfish. I still don't even know if I'm going to go NC with him. I just said I felt like doing it, and I wish I didn't even say that because I didn't expect it to cause such an argument. So Aita. Comments. Comment 1. You poor kid, your friend is in awe and you're certainly not, even if there is another kid waiting and desperately in need they could have and should have at least let you plan ahead more than a few days in advance, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Are you foster parents at least helping you find a place? Edit to add that you should let someone at the university know how it's done where you are, but some universities have programs for stuff like this. Comment 2. Dude, my cousin used to foster kids. She fostered 3 sisters and 1 other girl. I used the words used to because she adopted them as she wasn't in there for the money. Opie. Responding to Scotia, I don't really even care that they were looking after me and getting money for it. It doesn't bother me. I never knew how much they were getting to look after me, but I did know they were being paid. It does make me hurt and betrayed that they're kicking me out for a difference of 70-something pounds a day. Update 4. The Peters found my posts. The Peters' son Jamie has found my original Reddit post. I guess I should have been more careful with the details, but my mind was so frantic at the point of writing it, I just couldn't think straight. I'm not sure how he found it, but considering it is almost 10K up votes and Jamie was the person who introduced me to Reddit, I guess might have just popped up on his page. Does anyone know if it might have popped up to him because we're on the same network SL in the same location? A few hours ago, Jamie came to my room. He showed me the original post and asked if I had written it. At first, I tried to deny it, but I'm an awful liar, so he just knew. He asked why I didn't tell him about this, and I said I thought he knew. He told me he had no idea and would not have supported his parents throwing me out if he did. He was told I requested to move out. He genuinely seemed shocked and appalled at the details in the post. Against my wishes, he shared the posts and the family group chat. He did this out of a place of wanting to defend me. Mom, Dad, I really think you should read this and see the impact this is having on. But I really wish he didn't do it. They've both read the message, but neither have responded. I have not left my room since. I'm really anxious right now, like I'm at the level before a panic attack. I can feel one coming on. Comments. Comment Stay calm and know that you did nothing wrong. They may try to gaslight you, they may lie to your brother, they don't have a good track record for being decent people, but no matter what they do, remember you did nothing wrong. They cannot throw you out because of it. They have learned their lesson on that. I'm glad to know your brother didn't agree with their horrible decision, and I'm glad that he found out him not looking you in the eye these past couple of days may have had something to do with the tension already in the air, and I'm thinking you just up and wanted to leave. I hope it turns out that they realize their mistakes and apologize profusely, but brace yourself for that not happening, and that they may get upset with you for airing dirty laundry. They may end up trying to guilt you and blame everything on you. They may do nothing. Please remember, no matter what they say and no matter what your ex-best friend said, you did nothing wrong. Do your feelings are valid. You deserve love. You did not deserve what they did to you. Update 5. What I'm going to send in the family group chat is this a bad idea to Matt and Claire. I came to you as a 7-year-old who had never felt love or affection or anything remotely nice. I was taught at a young age to fear those in authority, to fear the sudden changes in the moods of my birth parents. I was taught to bottle up my emotions and my pain and never show it. When I first came to you, my life was ruled by fear and anxiety. I know my behaviors back then were awful, were a struggle to manage. I had been taught there were no consequences for some actions and firm, scary and hard consequences for others. The worst part was that those actions never seemed to be consistent. I could do something one day and be praised by my birth family, and another day I would be beaten. Love was not something given, it was something earned. It was conditional and shallow. You both showed me another way. You showed me love and affection, and at first, it felt confusing and hard to comprehend. I couldn't see myself as anything more than a nuisance. I couldn't see why someone would love me. I couldn't understand why you weren't beating me. Do you remember me telling you? You can hit me if I be naughty. I won't mind. Slowly, you taught me to trust and love myself and those around me. You showed me that no matter what I did, you wouldn't give up on me. You wouldn't send me away or hate me, and I really tried to make you. I know that I was scared. You made me realize that it wasn't my own fault I was in care, and that I wasn't to blame for the things that happened to my birth family. You showed me appropriate outlets to my fears. You showed me love, compassion, and kindness. The first day I remember feeling truly safe was when I was sitting in your arms at 8 years old watching Shrek. I still think back to that moment. Probably just felt like another day to you, but to me, it is a core memory in my life. It's a moment that shapes the way I see myself. You sat up with me when I was worried about moving up to secondary school. You comforted me when my birth mom told me she no longer wanted to be part of my life. You were there when 20 broke up with me when I was 15 years old, and I felt like my whole world was ending again. You encouraged me to go beyond with my studies and apply to university. The most important thing you showed me was that I was worthy of being loved and respected. You never gave up on me. I am who I am today because of what you did. I look at myself and I see compassion and care and kindness, and in those traits I see you. You weren't my birth family, but you were my family, my only family. I don't know what changed. Why has there been a switch? Why have you gone from the loving and caring parents you were? When I leave my room now I no longer feel that love and kindness that brought me out of the pits of despair as a child. It's almost as if you have completely altered the way you see me, and I just can't understand why. A few days ago, you told me I had to move out. You gave me 4 days' notice to leave my family. You sent me back into feeling like that child at 7 years old. I'm not saying this to guilt you or to ask you to let me stay. That has passed now, and unfortunately, I don't think I'll ever be able to see you the same way again. I understand if you were hard on money or if you wanted to help another child like me, but why not talk to me? Why it on me and then act like I don't matter? Why tell me it's just business? Did you think that would make it hurt less? Since you told me, my whole life has been turned upside down, and I don't know how I will make it to the other side. If I had felt like this a few weeks ago, do you know who I would have gone to? I would have gone to you. I would have told you my worries and my fears, and you would have said the exact right thing, and then we'd sit together and watch some awful TV show. And now I have no one again. I feel like I'm being told for the second time in my life that I don't deserve a family, and this time, I have no one to pick me up off the edge. That was always you, Mom and Dad, it was always you I could rely on. Why are you giving up on me now? Some comment. Send it to them, let them know how you feel, how they hurt you, and that they cannot expect you to ever contact them again after you leave. They need to know how you feel, send it to them, and if you want to leave the GC because they may try to justify their actions and you don't need to hear it. Opie. Responding to J Loves writing, the sad thing is I don't think I even want them to love me again. Update 6. I've contacted my PA and I'm moving out today. My PA is allowing me to store my things I can't take with me in his garage. It's kind of him. He's found me a place at a local hostel. I'll get my own room apparently, which was a big deciding factor on if I wanted to move in or not. The hostel works with the LA and houses a lot of care levers, the English term for someone who is aged out of foster care, while they wait for their own houses. I haven't sent the message yet, but I know my foster brother Jamie has seen it. Yesterday I felt overwhelming emotions. Today I feel none. I don't know which is better. I'll send once I moved out. I have a room, so I'll be gone in a few hours. I still haven't spoken to them, but I just can't face it anymore. I am sick of being anxious and stressed about this. I guess they did get their 4-day notice after all. Edit 1. I have just left Peter's house for the last time. The room is ready for me at the hostel. I feel so weird and sad and lonely right now. I've ordered myself a pizza to have for dinner today, and my PA even paid for it. I just want to get in bed and cry. My head is spinning thinking about everything I need to do. Wish me luck, everyone. Edit 2. I want to clarify something. I was hurt and in shock when I wrote my first post, but I want to make it understood that I was never eligible to be adopted. At first, the end goal for me was to reintegrate me into my birth family. By the time we knew that was never going to happen, I wouldn't have accepted adoption as I wanted to keep my legal ties with my birth family. The Peters always told me it didn't matter, that I didn't want to be adopted, and they loved me the same anyway. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything, or maybe it would have. They were paid fortnightly for caring for me, and they would get £1,565.48. That's £472.48 per year they got just to raise me, which is about $522, 19,577 CS. I keep thinking about that number. Was that all I was? I wonder what I would change if I could go back in time. Edit 3. I am settled in the hostel now. It's not exactly luxury to say the least, but at least I'm here now. I sent the text message very slightly altered from the one I wrote yesterday, and then I left the group chat. That was probably the wrong thing to do. I don't know. Update 7. This is going to be my final update on all of this. I want to put everything behind me. Claire rang me crying saying she had no idea I felt like this. How could she not know? She said she was sorry and begged me to come back. God, how do I ruin everything? She was telling me all these things about how she regrets the past few days so much and wishes she could take it all back. I said, this is not fair. She cannot throw me out and then call me crying. I said, it's manipulative. She just kept saying sorry. She said she loves me and wants me to come home. Jesus, this is just a lie, right? She must have known. Am I the bad person here? I feel so confused. I don't know what to do. I just hung up, and then she started texting me, and I blocked her. But now I feel like I'm the bad person here. I'm so tired of this, of all of this. I want nothing to do with any of them. I don't think Reddit is good for me. I'm not sure any of this is good for me. I'm going to delete the app. Sorry, everyone. Comments. Comment. I've been following along with your updates as you post them up, and I want to tell you that I'm so sorry you're going through this, that you deserve better, and that you are so strong in a situation where you shouldn't have to be. I'm glad your PA is helping you, and I wish you nothing but success and happiness. Opie. Responding to Calamita Girls, thank you. I considered contacting my bio mom. Last time I spoke to her was when I was a young teen, but I think it might just be seeking out something to make myself feel more hurt, and I don't think I could deal with any more rejection to bigger and better things. Update 8. The Peters have a new foster boy living with them already. When I brought up my concerns about them potentially doing the same thing they did to me to another child, I was told they were going to be given extra guidance and support when children reach 17-18 and ensuring everyone is on the same page about staying put orders. That's it, nothing else, extra guidance. Is that even a slap on the wrist? My PA told me that they were unfortunately within their rights to ask me to leave after I turned 18. I said about how they told me it was a business decision, and they told me that, unfortunately, financial does come into decisions like this. Is that all I am, a financial decision? Does this system seem fair to anyone? I feel like I'm losing my mind. There should be more of a punishment for them. I'm not saying they should be banned from fostering again. I don't know. I still feel all in a tizzy. My mind just going crazy. I keep saying I'm not going to add anything else to this account, but I genuinely have no one else to talk to about this. Jamie, as nice as he is, doesn't understand me, and my friend just doesn't get it at all. Update 9. It's been a little while since my last post. I'm not sure why I'm even posting now. I'm just feeling really depressed today, and I should be feeling happy. I want to get this out the way first. You may have noticed I deleted everything on here. That was intentional. I want to move on. I haven't had any contact with any of the Peter family since Jamie and I had our argument. I don't want anyone to interact with Jamie if he posts more. He is just attention-seeking. If people have a copy of what Jamie wrote, I would appreciate it if you deleted them. SL didn't share them anywhere. The stuff he shared about me, it was just to hurt me. It was some of the most shameful things I ever did, so I can understand if you don't want to support me after you read what it. If you do feel that way, just know I'm really sorry for what I did as a child. It isn't who I am now, and it wasn't who I was then. I'm sorry if I hurt or mislead anyone. That wasn't my intention. The Peters have a new foster child already living with them. I mentioned this before, but when I said I wanted it on their record that they tried to kick me out with no notice, I was told they would be given extra guidance if they have a child living with them start the process to aging out. I'm in two minds because honestly I feel like that is just a slap on the wrist and thing else, but at least someone will be watching over them in the future when one of their other foster children gets to 18. I have some good news today. My PA got in contact with my first choice university, which is also the uni he went to, and he somehow got them to convert their conditional offer into an unconditional offer, which means no matter what grades I get from my A-levels, I get to study there. I don't even know how he managed to do it. I am so grateful for it. He's also got them to explain all the support I get as a care lever, which is great. They're giving me free accommodation for the first year, which has released a huge stress for me because I had no clue how I was going to get to uni each morning, and they're going to lower the passing grade boundaries for me and my first year, though I hope I won't need this. I want to be getting good grades, and they're giving me a starter pack of important things I will need for my first year. Even though all those good things are happening for me, I just don't feel happy. I'm trying not to show it, but I actually really worried about starting uni, and I used to have the Peters to help me, and CLA especially used to give me a lot of emotional support. I really feel like a missing part of myself. I feel stupid saying this, and you guys are probably going to tell me it's stupid, but I just went the other day and watched Peter's house from afar. They didn't know I was there, but I could see into the living room window and were just acting normal, and the new foster child was there also. I literally sat there for a few hours just watching. I really want to go and speak to them, but I know it's a bad idea. I shouldn't want them back, but I do. I feel really isolated, which is probably why I've come back here to post. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My gold digger future son-in-law tried to blackmail me with my affair, but it brought us closer together. I remember the incident that happened 6 months ago. It brought my daughter and me closer than we've been ever since she turned 16. It has been a real fight every now and then between us. We never agree on even the minutest trifle. It was like she derived pleasures going against my will. Inasmuch as I make the rule, I try as much as possible to consider her, but she outrightly breaks the rule. One time she told me she didn't ask to be born into this world by me, and I had no right to tell her what to do. It really broke my heart. I prayed and wished something would happen that would make her realize how wrong she was. It didn't happen as fast as I hoped. After she graduated from high school, it became a very serious fight. One time she left home for 2 weeks, not responding to my calls. It left me really worried. None of her friends knew her whereabouts. If they did, they were loyal enough not to let me know. I didn't know what else to do than report to the police. She got to know about it, and she called immediately, threatening never to come back until I withdrew the complaint. At least tell me your whereabouts. She refused and hung up. The next day, I went to the police and told them, even though I was feeling embarrassed. Laura didn't come home after a week. I was sick of worry. I was shocked and grateful when I got home from work, and I found her sleeping. One day I asked my housekeeper, who told me she got back sour and drunk. It was later that I learned she'd gone to Malibu with a stupid boy who attended the same high school as her. Nothing breaks a mother more than having a rebellious child who hates her for the mere reason of bringing her into the world. Maybe it was the absence of a man to call dad from the onset. It has just been us, just the two of us. Her father had disappeared the moment he learned I was carrying his child, and I've had to take responsibility for her in the past 20 years. Isn't that enough to forget him and not blame me for his absence? I've made efforts and spent oodles of money to get her into college, yet she refused. In her words, "I don't need college to live." What didn't I do to secure her future? She chose her path, and I had to respect that, hoping that someday she'll come to her senses. It breaks me that it took a long time before it came to that. I was dumbfounded when she got home one evening with a young man she called Jimmy, a remarkably built young man on blonde with biceps threatening to rip out of the fabric of his sleeves, broad shoulders that carry the weight of his heartlessness and greed. His mere presence and the atmosphere were foggy. I tried so hard to keep cool, waiting to hear about this man from my daughter. She merely said he was her fiancé, that she didn't want any drama from me. I was disappointed. I felt fury erupting from my stomach. I quickly gulped a glass of water. I felt a little calm, but with much difficulty I nauseated my disgust, however choking it was. All I said was okay, and I asked why he was here. She asked if she had no right to bring whoever she pleases into the house. I was mad at such disrespect. I was further stunned when she said he was going to live with us in the estate and that I should give him a job in my company. If she were not my daughter and we were not citizens of the United States of America, I'd have gone physical with her and given her a slap for once, one she will always refer back to, just like I've seen in a movie from somewhere in another place. The slap left traces of lines on the victim's cheek, and that was really deserving of my daughter. I maintained a surprisingly calm demeanor as I scooped some grains of rice, opened my mouth wide, welcomed it into my mouth, chewed, and felt it travel right through my esophagus down to my belly. Absent-mindedly, I drank up my glass of wine. All the while the rascal-looking man was not ashamed with the way he gluttonously emptied his plate of meal. He ate like an uncultured swine, and I felt embarrassed instead. I heard myself ask, "You got a college degree?" He was nodding in affirmation when my daughter said that those questions were unnecessary since he was her husband-to-be and I was in the position to offer him a job. I was compelled to give him the job just to make Laura happy. She enjoys doing the opposite of what it is I ever wanted for her ever since she clocked 16. I'd had more difficulty than I did my entire life trying to raise her properly. She refused to listen. Once I warned her never to get into a car driven by a teenager. The next day she got home in a car driven by a boy. I was speechless because it was just a day before that I told her. After dinner I went upstairs into my room. As I peered from my window, I saw them moving into the apartment with Jimmy's belongings. I was ashamed of how shameful it was to have a supposed son-in-law moving into the same apartment. I was lost in thought when my phone rang. It was Jonathan on the other end. He called to know how I was. I told him I wasn't okay, and he knew at once the reason. All those while he had been the support I needed mentally to get through the emotional turmoil my daughter had thrown me into ever since she turned 16. Jonathan had been not just a colleague, but a friend. We got into a romantic relationship officially around the time Laura left home for Malibu. He was there to soothe and encourage me, and somehow we had sex, though it was awkward afterward. He eventually told me how he felt about me, and ever since then he was always there and was the strong fulcrum that I needed to pull through. After I told him about Jimmy, he said it was okay. How hard would it be since we had enough houses in the estate? Besides, I'm in the position of giving him a job to make him a better man. Perhaps he was the right man for my daughter, and all of that, so I loosened up a bit. Afterward, we discussed our relationship and how well things were going between us. We expressed our love for each other once again, as we often do. 2 months later, while in my office, I heard a knock on the door, and it was my receptionist. I was taken aback as to when she had ever come to my office during work hours. She doesn't report directly to me, and I was compelled to understand why she would be in my office. I gestured for her to sit, and she did. When I asked what was wrong, She complained about Jimmy Beacon, the assistant director of the tech unit, making sexual advances toward her, and just like expected, she had come to make an official complaint. I was at a loss for words. I finally told her I would investigate the matter accordingly. Thankfully, she left my office. I didn't know what to do, but I was grateful I never disclosed the fact he was my son-in-law-to-be. It would have been a very big embarrassment. This complaint from my receptionist is in addition to dozens of others from my other workers. I was angry about the whole thing. Why wouldn't nobody come to live in my house? I give him a job, and he decides to sexually harass my workers under my nose. That was the height of disrespect, and I decided I would talk it over with my daughter. This gold digger she brought was trying to destroy reputations I labored to build, and I wasn't going to allow it. I was still fuming when Jonathan walked into my office in his habitual manner of not knocking. He locked the door behind him, dropped the files he was having as he observed my mood. He asked what was wrong, and I told him all that I knew, and he was disappointed. But he decided he would talk to Jimmy while I do the same with my daughter later. He told me why he was there. It was strictly business. He was made an offer by one of the renowned fashion companies called Devil Wears in New York, and he would be leaving the city soon. I wasn't surprised. I had always known he had an interest in fashion. Besides, he created styles in his sketchbook that never left his person. Styles which he would send across to so many fashion houses hoping to land a deal, and finally here it was. It was a mature thing to rejoice with him and let him go. Jonathan had been with me from the beginning. Initially, it was hard for him to find his ground, but he was smart and intelligent, and he was where he was as a result of hard work and effort. Most times I wondered if it was his doggedness or good looks that got me so attracted to him. Though I was sad, I was happy for his success. He would finally live his dreams. However, I was worried as to how we would manage the relationship. As if he was thinking about the same thing, he promised he would be back after a while, which he wasn't certain. I knew better than banking on his promises. I resolved it was better I let him go and pursue his dreams. Besides, nothing lasts forever. We had enjoyed the relationship while it lasted, and I was ready to make whatever sacrifices were needed. He was hurt by this because he never envisaged that our relationship wouldn't last. He calmly left my office and I didn't call him back. 42 years of my life was enough to teach me not to hold anyone back, but to let things go and simply enjoy it while it lasts. Silently I prayed Laura would come to a realization of what I honestly wasn't sure of, but I knew if she came to the realization, a lot would change in her way. I got home that evening, and Jimmy was the first person I met. Laura, as I reckoned, was in the bathroom. I told him about the complaints I'd received from some of my staff, which he denied outrightly. However, I warned him to desist from such, else my daughter would learn about it and the board would take immediate action. He didn't look bothered by what I told him. Instead, he went ahead to tell me about his displeasure at having Jonathan speak to him, that he had no right to meddle in his affairs. The same way I retorted that he had no right to be standing where he was under my roof, same way he had no right to be enjoying the benefits of living in my house for free. I resolved not to talk to Laura about it. Besides, she would not listen since she was head over heels for Jimmy. She would probably think I was trying to break up her relationship ship, and there we would have a round of tongues lashing out hurting words. I often wonder why it is that my daughter hated me that much that I can't talk to her like a mother would and she listens. Not up to 2 weeks while I was working out my ass at my office, I got a text from Laura which read, "It's high time Jimmy got his own car." This cracked me up a little, and gradually I let out a cruel laughter. My secretary was alarmed, and she kept asking what was the matter. I laughed until I felt my ribs hurt, and then it was followed by a tear. Immediately I was given a handkerchief to wipe the tears already streaming down my cheeks. I thanked my secretary and asked her to leave, promising to be okay. She did. I just sat there not saying a word, choked by hate, anger, bitterness. I got home that day to meet Laura already waiting at the door for me. I suspected Jimmy might be somewhere in the house listening to our conversation. She demanded an audience and refused my pleas for a later time due to my fatigue. I was forced to slum into the couch and listen to what she had to say. Never have I ever been asked to buy a car for a total stranger whom I am not pleased with, who lives in my house, whose sake my own daughter was ready to rob me clean. I reminded her how much I had spent a week ago all for the same Jimmy. For once, I told her how much I worked hard to be where I was, and I would not let some riff-raff from some hole burned bridges and reap where he did not sow. I made it clear that Jimmy was a gold digger and I would not spend a dime of my hard-earned money for his sake anymore, no matter what. This did not go down well with Laura. She refused to listen to all the warnings I gave her but threatened to leave the house and never come back since I would not do her bidding. Laura swore she would leave and I would never see her again. In fact, she swore she would not attend my funeral since I did not have her happiness at heart. I went mute while she talked. There was Jimmy walking into the exchange, and before me he pleaded with Laura not to leave the estate, that he would win my trust eventually. I just stood up and carried the weight of my sadness and fatigue into my bedroom. Good thing I had my last dinner with Jonathan and I wasn't famished, so I slept off. Later around 2 a.m., I heard a tire screeching outside of the building, and I looked from my window. It was Laura and Jimmy driving into the compound from wherever they'd been, presumably party. I sighed deeply and got back into bed. A week later, I was going through report from my secretary when Jimmy stormed into my office. I was displeased at the behavior, and I ordered him out, but instead he sat down smiling and looking all cheerful. I wondered what he was up to. He spoke in an unusually calm and respectful manner which I never expected. In a flash he drifted into a more condescending and boisterous tone, appraising his ability to unravel mystery and open up secrets hidden in the midst. I was lost as to what he meant. He made some analogy about a married man screwing a woman supposedly in an intimate relationship with another which resulted in some loss. Immediately I cast my mind back to 3 days ago when Ethan, director of production at the company's anniversary celebration, had gotten himself drunk and lost his way into my hotel room. We got talking. I was a little tipsy and we both lost control and we had a fling and that was all there was to it. The next morning I told him that what happened was a mistake and should never be referred to in future conversations, and he said he was going to say the same thing and that was it. Besides, he was married with 2 kids, and I know him to be a loyal husband and father. I was displeased with myself, but one cannot stay mad at oneself forever unless you are a masochist. Even when I told my therapist, she said it was just a fling. Neither of us had envisaged it. However, it's been awkward with Ethan afterward. I noticed the way he looked at me at the board meeting, though I didn't quite make anything out of it. It enough to make me uncomfortable. I wondered if this incident was what Jimmy was referring to in his dumb analogy. I managed to get in control of my emotions as I asked what he was talking about. He let out a thundering laughter like the fiery male fairy tale character with magical power over fire and furnace Vulcan. He began to rattle as to how he had seen Ethan getting into my room and how he had listened to everything that transpired that night. I found myself asking him how he had stayed to listen to all that noise and what he did afterward, which he claimed was none of my business. I retorted this was none of his business either. He said it was his business since he knows the work ethics of our company. He knew the marital status of Ethan as well, knew my relationship status with Jonathan, and might well let his mouth run like a tap as I probably seemed disturbed and fearful as I wriggled on the chair where I sat. He made a toot-toot sound and went ahead to tell me he wouldn't tell anyone about it. He assured me it was just between us and that he wouldn't let it out. I didn't quite trust him as I asked what was in it for him. He smiled and said nothing, but he just came for a chat with his soon-to-be mother-in-law. With that, he left my office. I felt my heart skip. The minute this gets out, I will be done, I thought worriedly. A night fling was going to cost me a lot. I began to think about what to do. Nothing was making sense. I felt my temperature burning up, my heart skipping bits for minutes before skipping again. All around me was twirling round and round. I felt hot in a fully air-conned conditioned office. The whole day went badly. I couldn't eat even while I was hungry. I felt a lump in my stomach, and all I had was water, gulping down cups of water during dinner. I was shocked to find out that Jimmy had prepared dinner. I was wondering what he was up to. I couldn't speak much at the dining. Jimmy went on and on talking and laughing loudly that Laura had to ask if he had won the lottery or something. He simply said he just had a great day and that he chose to be happy. I knew it was all a lie. He was happy because he felt he had trapped me in the web he designed for me. Little did he know what was coming. The next morning, when I looked out my window and saw Laura driving out, I exhaled deeply, hoping she left with Jimmy. I didn't want the ill luck of having to storm into him at the sitting or wherever. I got ready for work, walked downstairs into the living room, and was glad when I saw just the housekeeper. I went to the dining to have my breakfast. Halfway into sipping my cup of tea was the devil smiling at me. I froze and melted in a flash. He just smiled and spat out a sarcastic good morning, and said something about how pleasant it is for his mother-in-law to be the first to grace his sight on a beautiful morning. I choked on the tea. He passed me a napkin. I couldn't utter a word. My mind traveled back to the previous day, and I cursed. He went ahead to tell me how necessary it was to give him some money to sort out some bills. I realized that this was what all of these were about, a blackmail. I mustered courage, regained my strength, controlled my breath, and I told him I wouldn't give him a dime. He seemed pissed but collected. I told him I didn't have money to throw since I worked for it, and he should do the same for himself. He sighed, gnashed his teeth, and made a toot sound. According to him, it was a matter of necessity that I couldn't avoid, or I'll be faced with a shameful consequence. Then he said it was okay. He reached for his cell phone in his pants pocket. I peered from my side view as he made some touching on the screen, and immediately I got a message buzz on my phone, dropped the napkin, and grabbed my phone to see what it was. I was dumbfounded by what I saw. I said no word. Immediately I grabbed my purse and left for the office. I sat at my table thinking about what to do. I was at a loss. How could one be so heartless? Jimmy was bent on ruining my life. I was so afraid that I had to send him the money he demanded for it. It was quite a whopping sum, but I painfully gave it to him, thinking that that was the end. I thought he would stop after that. The thing about blackmailers is that they never stop, one for more, and so it continues. The next day he was demanding more money. This went on for a while, and I knew I was getting to my breaking point. Laura barely listens to whatever it is I try to tell her. She never listened to every single thing I had to tell her. I got fed up with all of it, so I started devising a means to free myself from the shackles of extortion. A thought flashed through my mind, and I set to work. I summoned Ethan to my office, told him about the new development, and he was more disturbed than I expected. I showed him the pictures Jimmy had sent me that morning, and he was cursing breathlessly. He didn't handle it as well as I'd envisaged. Being a man, I'd thought he'd be calm to think about the step to be taken. Instead, he seemed as though his heart was about to jump out of his body. So I told him he'd have to move to the company startup in Florida. Since I was the board chairperson, I didn't have to consult with board members for this decision, and he was willing to move, owning to the fact that his wife also got a job at the Central Hospital, Florida. So he was more than willing to move. It all fell into place as everything was planned out. He was leaving in 5 days. Later, I called Jimmy to strike a deal, at least come to an agreement as to what it is he wanted exactly. When he came into my office, he was looking so serious that I wondered what he was up to. However, I didn't ask, whatever, it was not my business. I'd asked him what exactly he would exchange for the pictures you were using to blackmail me, and without giving it a thought even for a second, he demanded for my estate. This kept me baffled. I thought he was joking. I smiled uncomfortably and repeated the question, thinking perhaps I wasn't clear earlier. He repeated the same thing, he would have my estate in exchange for the pictures, and he wasn't joking with words. I saw a beast in the way he smirked. Nothing about him was pleasant. I have always known he was a gold digger, a greedy person who would do anything to get what he wanted. I told him outrightly that from the first day he set his God-forsaken feet into my home, there was something unsettling around him. I told him how much of a greedy he was and how soon karma would catch up with him, tear him apart bit by bit, and he'll feel the pain he inflicted on others. I swore and cursed him. All he said in response was that I should leave with my daughter after giving him the estate and that he was never interested in her. This broke my heart. I was going to forgive his insults, disrespect, blackmail, and gold digging, but the fact that he just used my daughter broke me. I felt moist around my eyes, and all became silent even when he walked out of my office. I didn't notice for what seemed like an hour. I was in a state of mental blackout, but I felt tears streaming down my cheeks which tasted salty. I had no idea about the next step to take, but I didn't know there was progress. Unfortunately for Jimmy, I had recorded the entire conversation. It partly went just as I envisaged, although I had forgotten to stop recording immediately after the conversation, but it was safely saved and I was good to get on with the next step, even though I was more hurt knowing that he only used my daughter to make money. I talked to Laura about it later that day. I was surprised when she responded to my call immediately. Listening to the record, she looked disappointed and sad. She further told me how she had found some dishonest scheme stored up in his phone. It appears that he goes about robbing people of their lifetime investment and money. We weren't the only ones he was blackmailing. He had done it to a lot of other people. He was a scam. He lived by extorting people. Laura suggested we call the police on him. For the first time, we were unanimously going to make a decision. I was glad that she was getting back to her senses, and I hoped it remained so. Immediately, we heard him pull up into the garage. I asked Laura to pretend as if everything was cool. We agreed to steal his phone. She went into their bedroom and acted normal so Jimmy wouldn't get suspicious. I stayed in my room thinking about what next to do. I heard them leave after a while, and I walked stealthily into their room. Laura had told me where exactly to find it. I took it. Immediately, I left for the police station. At the station, I told them everything I knew and was asked to write a statement, which I did, and was called back by an officer to write my name in a stipulated space tag to complainant. Immediately, I got done with it. Marks and the officer seemed fascinated by the name but didn't have the time to ask more about it. They were ready for an arrest. We got back home only to find Jimmy about to hit Laura with a vase for not telling him where his phone was. I screamed as the officers hurriedly handcuffed him. I helped my daughter up and gave her a glass of water. He threatened again to reveal my secret affairs with Ethan, which made me laugh. I told him he had nothing on me anymore. Jonathan had left the company weeks ago. I cursed his ignorance. All these while he had been in the company and hadn't seen Jonathan. It didn't cross his mind to find out why. As for Ethan, he was far away in Florida. It was obvious to him that he had been caught in the same web he designed for me. That night, I was fixing up my bedroom when Laura walked in looking frightened. We both made to talk at the same time but paused waiting for who goes first. A mother knows when her child is back. I was bustling with emotions when she said she was sorry. For once, I saw the sincerity and repentance in her voice. She went on and talked about Malibu. She went there with her classmates from high school, and that was where she met Jimmy. She was sorry for threatening not to attend my funeral. She was sorry for disrespecting me. She was sorry being obstinate. She was sorry for putting me through a lot of pressure. She was specifically naming each and every hardship she put me through. I maintained an unusual calmness. I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. I cried. We both cried. For a while we cried and clung to each other, and that marked the beginning of our relationship. The next morning we woke up, and I could swear there was a flood of fresh air sweeping into my room, and it stayed. It was dawn, and I knew that while the sun rose it would herald a strong mother and daughter relationship that would never be broken by anything. It was a long, hard year, and I was grateful it was finally over. Laura was back to her senses, and I couldn't be more grateful and happy. Laura was set on making inquiries about college. She was finally ready to go to college, and I couldn't be more happy. She decided she would go to Princeton and study business management. I was more than elated when she told me about it. When I got into a heart-to-heart conversation with her, I understood it was Jimmy who had deceived her into thinking that she doesn't need college. I was glad she finally came to her senses. These past few days have been the happiest days of my life. If gratefulness was a person, that would be me. I forgave Laura because she was my daughter and was all that I had. We've been happy ever since. At the height of the reconciliation, I got a call from Jonathan checking up on us. We ended the call with an air of something unfinished. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.